Chapter 432. Elder Zhou Yi knitted his brows. She came out? But I didn't see anyone just now. An ominous feeling rose in Xianxia's heart. You really didn't see her? Then what about now? Is she still hiding somewhere here? This place has already become a sea of fire. With her own abilities, how can Chu Luiyue successfully escape from this place without a sound? As she spoke, she agitatedly grabbed Elder Zhou Yi's arm. Elder Zhou Yi's heart ached when he saw her frantic and crazy expression. I wonder how much torture Xianxian went through inside for her to become like this. He comforted her. Xianxian, don't be anxious. Let's leave this place first. We'll talk about the rest later. Definitely not. Xianxian screamed shrilly. She took that wooden box. I spent so much effort to get this thing from the Empress. How can I let Tu Luiyue snatch it away just like that? I'm definitely indignant. Elder Zhou Yi knitted his brows and asked. What wooden box? Is it very important? Xianxian took a deep breath in. She didn't tell anyone about the wooden box and kept it carefully. Even when she asked Father and Elder Zhou Yi for help this time, she only said that Rongjin was the fake Heaven's chosen son and that she was implicated. Facing Elder Zhou Yi's question, she instantly felt guilty. Why yes, it's more important. You must help me. Elder Zhou Yi surveyed the surroundings and his expression was tense. But Emperor Zhouan and the rest are already here and there will be more and more people. The later it takes, the harder it will be for us to leave. Also, I don't know who set this fire on purpose. We must get out of here as soon as possible. If not, your body alone won't be able to take it. He was very strong, but it wasn't easy for him to bring Xianxian out in her current state. Besides, he hid his identity this time. If Emperor Zhouan and the rest knew who he was and the news spread to Mingyue Tianshan, he would definitely be in trouble. Xianxian, don't worry. Since you know that it was Chu Luiyue who stole your things, you'll have the chance to snatch them back in the future. Then he carried Xianxian on his back and planned to find an opportunity to rush out. Xianxian was in a dilemma, but she knew that this was the best choice given the current situation, so she could only accept it. A silver barrier instantly enveloped the two of them. The light flickered and covered most of their figures. From the outside it was impossible to see who was inside. With a tap of his foot, Elder Zhou Yi instantly charged out of the greenish-white sea of fire and into the air. They're out. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the besieging crowd. Several figures immediately chased after him. Emperor Zhouan closely stared at the unity boundary. Even though he couldn't see their faces, he could vaguely see that there were two people inside. His heart sank. One of them must be Xianxian. Stop them at all costs. Emperor Zhouan ordered. Countless sharp arrows flew out. But they were all blocked by the silver barrier in the end. But just as they were about to escape, a figure suddenly appeared. They were blocking their way. When Elder Zhou Yi saw that person's face, his expression immediately turned solemn. It's actually Yi Zhiding. The next moment the other party's words completely stunned him. Long time no see. How have you been? Yi Zhiding recognized me. Thoughts flashed across Elder Zhou Yi's mind. I've only met Yi Zhiding a few times and the other party hasn't even seen my face. How can he confirm my identity? Yi Zhiding smiled as he waved the fan in his hands. Since you're here, why don't you sit down and have a drink? Elder Zhou Yi guessed that Yi Zhiding was just bluffing. He didn't even plan to reply as he crazily circulated the force in his body. In an instant the pressure on the barrier became even stronger. It then rapidly flew to the side. Elder Yi's smile didn't change as he waved his wrist, and the fan was instantly flung out. Whoa! The moment it flew out, the fan actually fell apart and transformed into numerous white feathers that flew toward Elder Zhou Yi and Xianxian. The sound of the feathers piercing through the air was heard. In the blink of an eye, those white feathers actually flew to the surroundings of the barrier. He was completely surrounded. Elder Zhou Yi immediately felt a strong suppression coming toward him. The surrounding space also gradually became heavy and stagnant. Even their speed started to slow down. Elder Zhou Yi was shocked. Yi Zhiding's fan is actually so powerful. At this moment, one of the white feathers suddenly pierced forward. The sound of something breaking was heard. Then Elder Zhou Yi was shocked to see that a crack had appeared on the silver barrier around him. A white feather slowly pierced in. He immediately wanted to repair it, but it was already too late. The next moment that white feather suddenly dissipated. The entire barrier also instantly transformed into countless rays of light and scattered in all directions. The veil hat on his head was also crushed by this terrifying force. But just as the two of them were about to be exposed to the crowd, Elder Yi suddenly shouted, "Stop! Collect!" The moment he said this, the white feathers instantly multiplied and connected with each other in layers. They completely covered Elder Zhou Yi and Situ Xingqian's figures. Such a huge commotion happened in the palace, so it naturally couldn't be hidden. Very quickly, countless pairs of eyes in the imperial city looked in that direction. In the dark night, only the fire that shot into the sky was eye-catching and shocking. Quite a few people started to secretly guess. Did something happen in the palace? During this period of time, the imperial city really wasn't peaceful. After just a few days, the empress passed away, Rongjin was deposed, and even the palace was burning. The entire imperial city's atmosphere seemed to become much heavier as a result. In the darkness, something seemed to be moving. It was unsettling. At this point, Chu Liuyue's room was completely silent. After asking that question, Qi Han fell silent. Chu Liyue quietly looked at him. She wasn't suspecting Qi Han. If not, she wouldn't have directly admitted her identity. However, Qi Han clearly didn't explain some things clearly. Even if what he said previously was reasonable, he just coincidentally followed Mu Qinghe here and found her by following the clues. But if he didn't know something, how could he be so sure that a young girl from a declining family in country Yaochen would be the high and mighty princess back then? Besides, even fewer people knew that she wanted to snatch the things in Situ Xingqian's hands. Could it be that Qi Han found out all of this by himself? Mu Qinghe also suspected me, and the two of them even interacted quite a bit. But because of her completely different appearance and body as well as her impeccable identity, he couldn't confirm it for a long time. How did Qi Han find out? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 433. Qi Han knew that he could not hide it anymore. After thinking for a while, he finally opened his mouth. After thinking for a while, he finally said, "Your Highness, this news came from Zhenbao Pavilion." Chu Liyue was stunned. Second Master Yen? Qi Han nodded and then shook his head. Chu Liyue suddenly understood. Did the head of Zhenbao Pavilion order Second Master Yen to pass this news to you? A look of surprise flashed across Qi Han's eyes. He did not expect her to figure it out so quickly. However, Her Highness has always been intelligent, so it's not strange that she could think of this. I went to Zhenbao Pavilion to buy herbs before. Later on, I found a letter in the box they sent. That letter? Chu Liyue understood. I see. If it's that person, it's not strange. This person has a mysterious background and is very resourceful. Country Yaochen's imperial mausoleum is almost completely under his control, let alone others. But if he deliberately told Qi Han this, doesn't it mean that he already knows my identity? Chu Liyue asked, "What about the letter?" Qi Han said, "That letter was specially treated. After I opened it and read it, I burned it." Chu Liyue felt a little regretful. The other party was obviously very cautious and didn't want to leave any traces. Qi Han glanced at her carefully. "Your Highness, I didn't tell you before because I didn't want you to worry. I originally planned to tell you after I found out that person's identity. In this world, other than the 13 Yu guards, there's only one other person who knows Her Highness' true identity. In fact, he even found out before they did." After Qi Han received the news, he felt very conflicted. On the one hand, he was overjoyed and excited that Chu Liyue might be Her Highness. On the other hand, he was secretly worried that the other party would use this to do something that would harm Her Highness. Chu Liyue thought for a moment, smiled faintly and shook her head. "You want to find out his identity? I'm afraid it's a little difficult. Also, since he already knows and told you, there's nothing to worry about. He has helped me so many times. If he wanted to deal with me, why would he need to spend so much effort? That person's strength and background are both extremely strong. From today onwards, don't waste any more time and energy investigating him." Qi Han was a little surprised. Just who was that person to make His Highness so fearful? And judging from His Highness' tone, he seems to be somewhat familiar with that person. "Your Highness knows that person?" "No, I don't," Chu Liyue said straightforwardly. She actually wanted to know the identity of the First Master more than anyone else. But the other party clearly didn't want her to know, so why should she waste her energy? When it was time to know, he would know. Since Chu Liwei had said so, Qi Han naturally did as he was told. Where are the other members of the 13U Guard? Do they know me? They're not in country Yaochen, but we've always been in contact. But I haven't told them about you. Before personally confirming His Highness's identity, he would not reveal it without permission. Chu Liwei smiled with satisfaction. Well done. You're still as cautious as ever. She had no choice but to acknowledge Qi Han today. The 13U Guards were still loyal to her and they were a huge help to her. However, the fewer people who knew about her identity, the better. Don't let them know about this first. When the time is right, I'll tell them personally. Qi Han immediately replied. Yes, Your Highness. After straightening out all these matters, Chu Liwei felt much better. Last question. Her slender and fair fingers tapped lightly on the table as she asked, enunciating each and every word. Did Mu Qinghe betray me? Zhongyi were both smart people. Let's not beat around the bush. Inside the palace, Elder Zhongyi and Situ Xingqian were trapped in a cage made of white feathers, and they couldn't move at all. Elder Yi stood in front of the two of them and looked down at them from above. Emperor Zhouan was standing at the side. Other than that, there was no one else. Elder Zhongyi didn't say anything, and Situ Xingqian seemed to have fainted due to excessive blood loss. I know a thing or two about Mingyue Tianshan's rules. If news of you barging into country Yaochen's palace gets out, it won't be good, right? Yi Zhiding still had a smile on his face, but the words he said made Elder Zhongyi break out in a cold sweat. Even though Mingyue Tianshan accepted disciples like the other clans, there was a bottom line. They didn't allow anyone to interfere with the country's affairs. Elder Zhongyi had committed a huge taboo. Not only would he be punished, but he might even be chased out of Mingyue Tianshan. Zhiding, what exactly do you want? Shouldn't I be the one asking you that? It's the middle of the night, yet you came all the way here, barged into Blessing Palace and even forcefully took her away. Speaking of which, isn't this all your fault? You're twisting the truth. Xingqian is country Xing Luo's eldest princess. You shouldn't have locked her up like this. Elder Zhongyi was even angrier when he said this. You tortured her until she doesn't look like a human anymore, yet you're blaming me. You're too much. You can't say that. Didn't you burn Blessing Palace just now? It would take a lot of effort to completely extinguish such a strong fire. Some of the palaces at the side also suffered the same fate. Elder Zhongyi was so angry that his beard trembled. I didn't set that fire. Elder Yi was dazed. Why not? Didn't you plan to set the fire and take her away in the chaos? Why would I use such a despicable method? If it weren't for that fire, I would have left with Xingqian long ago. You wouldn't have the chance to speak here. Looking at the agitated and angry Elder Zhongyi, Yi Zhiding became suspicious as he exchanged glances with Emperor Zhouan. Could it be? It really wasn't him? There's no harm in telling you today, there's someone who entered the Blessing Palace before this old man. Also, he even attacked Xingqian. He crippled one of her shoulders and one of her legs. When Elder Yi heard this, he immediately knitted his brows and carefully looked at Situ Xingqian, who had fainted on the floor. This injury wasn't caused by Emperor Zhouan? Emperor Zhouan also realized that something was amiss. He immediately stepped forward and stared at Elder Zhongyi. Who is it? Elder Zhongyi sneered. You all know this person too, Chu Liwei. Impossible. Old man Yi denied it without thinking. How could this be done by his precious disciple? How is it impossible? This was something Xingqian had said herself. Yi Zhiding, Chu Liwei is your disciple, right? She came and left so smoothly today. Could it be that you're secretly helping her? Bolsh **. Yi Zhiding directly swore. How can you believe Situ Xingqian's words? She had a grudge with my disciple long ago. She must have taken the chance to frame her. Elder Zhongyi chuckled in disdain and looked at Emperor Zhouan. Xingqian also said that Chu Liwei stole something from her. It's up to you whether to believe it or not. Digression. I'm going out for a while and I'm updating at night. A better reading experience comes from my UN. Chapter 434. Hearing this, Elder Yi thought that this was bad. Didn't His Majesty also want to find something from Situ Xingqian? Since Zhou Yi said this, he might be suspicious. As expected, he turned around and saw Emperor Zhou knitting his brows as if he were suspicious. Elder Yi immediately asked, Zhou Yi, why are you here? Zhou Yi, since this is the case, tell me what Lu Yue stole from Situ Xingqian. Emperor Zhou also held his breath. Zhou Yi was stumped. Situ Xingqian didn't even have the time to tell me. However, I'm sure that it's what Emperor Zhou wants from Situ Xingqian when he locked her up. His eyes sparkled as he looked at Emperor Zhou. Emperor Zhou, you should know best what she stole, right? Elder Yi sneered. Zhou Yi clearly doesn't know. He might even be making it up. Emperor Zhou kept quiet for a while and glanced at the unconscious Situ Xingqian. I'll talk to her about this personally when she wakes up. Elder Zhou Yi immediately became alert. What do you mean? I mean that before the matter is investigated, I'll have to trouble Elder Zhou Yi and Situ Xingqian to stay here for a while. Oh right, Rongjin and Situ Xingqian's wedding is being prepared. As Situ Xingqian's elder, it's good for you to attend as well. Then Emperor Zhou raised his feet and planned to leave. Rongsha, how dare you? Elder Zhou Yi was stunned by his words. In a moment of desperation, he directly shouted Emperor Zhou's name. Who is that Rongjin? How can he be worthy of Xingqian? If you insist, don't blame me for being rude. Emperor Zhou stood still and sneered. I'm calling you Elder Zhou Yi on account of Mingyue Tianshan. However, this doesn't mean that I'm afraid of you. You're not the only strong person in Mingyue Tianshan. Elder Zhou Yi's chest tightened. You've caused such a huge commotion tonight, so you'll definitely attract a lot of attention. Elder Zhou Yi, you're a smart person. If you're willing to cooperate, I'll take it that nothing happened today. But if you don't agree, don't blame me for being merciless. One Situ Yen wasn't enough. Did they think that with Zhou Yi, everything would be fine? Elder Yi stroked his beard. I remember that it has indeed been a period of time since I went to Mingyue Tianshan. Looks like I should find some time to go back and pay him a visit. Elder Zhou Yi was so angry that his face turned red. He never thought that he would be threatened by Emperor Zhou and Yi Zhiding. However, this was indeed his weakness. He couldn't bear the punishment of Mingyue Tianshan. If he forced his way through, it wasn't like he couldn't leave this place. But in that case, only Situ Xingqian would be left here. He was truly worried. Thus, after Elder Zhou Yi's expression changed several times, he finally gritted his teeth and admitted defeat. He glared at Elder Yi. Yi Zhiding, don't be smug too early. In this old man's opinion, that precious disciple of yours is very scheming. Who knows when I'll screw you over and you won't even know. Elder Yi smiled and said, Zhou Yi, as an outsider, you don't have to worry about the matters between us. If you have the time, you should take more care of Situ Xingqian. If this injury drags on for too long, it'll leave behind repercussions. You. Alright. I haven't seen you for a few years and your skills don't seem to have improved. You should take this chance to reflect properly. After Elder Yi said that, he immediately snapped his fingers. Countless white feathers instantly released a strong force and forcefully separated the two of them. Then they quickly gathered. Elder Yi, I'm afraid we'll have to trouble you these few days, said Emperor Zhou. Elder Yi nodded. Situ Xingqian was still manageable, but Elder Zhou Yi. Only Elder Yi could suppress him. Elder Yi waved his hands. I've long found him an eyesore, so I'll take my revenge this time. But, what do you think of what he said previously? Emperor Zhou hesitated for a while and finally said honestly, I think it might be possible. Elder Yi knitted his brows. Does this mean that your majesty really suspects Lu Yu? Emperor Zhou smiled bitterly and shook his head. I have no choice. Others don't know how important that thing is, but you know it best, Elder Yi. I'm not doing this for myself, but for the entire Yao Qin. Elder Yi thought for a while. Why don't I go and ask him directly? Emperor Zhou thought carefully and instantly felt that this seemed to be the best choice. I've always liked Chu Liyue. On one hand, she's Rong Xiu's fiancée now. If I touch her, Rong Xiu definitely won't be willing. On the other hand, there's also Mu Qinghe. Then I'll have to trouble you, Elder Yi. The fire in the palace burned for the entire night. It was only completely extinguished when the sun rose the next morning. The entire Blessing Palace had been completely burned down, and even the surrounding halls had become ruins. Quite a few palace servants had also lost their lives. It was rumored that the Blessing Palace had not been maintained for a long time, so it accidentally caught fire and caused this fire. Actually, anyone with eyes would know that the greenish-white fire wasn't an ordinary fire. It was most likely caused by phosphor powder. Ordinary people didn't even have this thing. It was obvious that this matter had deep implications. However, since the palace had already given an explanation, nobody would be so insensible as to investigate further. However, the Blessing Palace used to be Rong Jin's residence. Now that he was just crippled, such a fire started. It was hard not to think too much. This time he clearly didn't have a chance to turn things around. Princely Mansion. Early in the morning, Eunuch Min personally came over and said that His Majesty had summoned Rong Xiu to the palace. Everyone in Princely Mansion was very surprised. His Majesty had always thought highly of Rong Xiu. Considering that his body wasn't well, he rarely let him enter the palace. Today this meeting came out of the blue. However, Rong Xiu didn't seem to think too much. After simply packing up, he put on a black cloak and followed Eunuch Min into the palace. Emperor Zhou was waiting in the imperial study. Father. When he saw Rong Xiu enter and wanted to bow, Emperor Zhou immediately said, "There's no need for that. You don't have to be so formal. I called you here today because I have a few things to ask you." Rong Xiu's jade-like face was as gentle as usual. "I'll tell you everything I know." Emperor Zhou opened his mouth, but he hesitated in his heart. Rong Xiu was his most beloved son. For so many years he felt very guilty that he couldn't accompany Rong Xiu by his side. Hence, after Rong Xiu came back, he had been thinking of ways to make it up to him. Asking him this question now. It's unavoidably inappropriate. Rong Xiu quietly stood there as if he didn't see Emperor Zhou's dilemma. After a while, Emperor Zhou finally clenched his teeth and made up his mind. He asked, "Rong Xiu, when the palace was on fire last night, something went missing. Someone said that it was Lu Yu who did it. What do you think?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 435. If other people were here and heard this, they would definitely be shocked. This matter has a lot of implications, yet Emperor Zhou directly asked about it. This shows how much he trusts Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu widened his eyes and shock flashed across his eyes. "Father, did you call me here just for this?" Emperor Zhou looked at him solemnly and didn't say anything. Rong Xiu's lips curved up slightly and a light flashed across his eyes. "Father, are you suspicious of Yuer?" Emperor Zhou rubbed his glabella. "Rong Xiu, you've always been the smartest." He had to admit that Elder Zhou Ye's words did make him waver. Last night he almost didn't sleep well for the entire night as he kept thinking about this. Why did it have to be Chu Liyue out of so many people? Besides, judging from Chu Liyue's various shocking performances during this period of time, she might really be hiding some secrets. Even though Elder Yi had already promised to personally ask Chu Liyue, he was still worried. However, Chu Liyue's identity was special, so he couldn't and wasn't willing to touch her easily. Hence he could only ask Rong Xiu to come. Rong Xiu thought for a moment and suddenly said, "There's a problem. Father, you don't seem to know about it." Emperor Zhou sat up slightly. Rong Xiu still had a smile on his face, but there was a playful look between his brows. "Xianxia. She admired me for many years." Emperor Zhou was instantly dazed. Very quickly he understood something. Could it be that Xianxia is especially hostile towards Chu Liyue because of this? Emperor Zhou slowly knitted his brows. Even so, she shouldn't purposely frame you. After all, she already had a marriage agreement with Rong Jin. What good does it do her to provoke Chu Liyue? Rong Xiu's smile deepened, but it was tainted with a layer of coldness. Imperial father knows best what is going on with the engagement between her and Imperial brother. Emperor Zhou fell into deep thought. "I don't know if father still remembers that I went to the arena on the last day of the Qingjiao competition." Emperor Zhou nodded. "Of course I do. That day I originally wanted to ask you for help, but I met Xianxia off stage. This son inadvertently discovered that her sleeves were embroidered with cloud patterns that were almost exactly the same as this son's." Rong Xiu's tone was slightly cold. Emperor Zhou's heart thumped. In the past, Rong Xiu really loved that strange cloud pattern. Many of his clothes were embroidered with that pattern. Maybe it's just a coincidence? After I returned that day, I thought about it and felt a little uncomfortable, so I ordered the servants in the manor to burn all the clothes with that cloud pattern. Emperor Zhou's expression changed. He had some recollection of this incident, but he didn't pay much attention to it back then. He just thought that Wuxia wanted to throw all the clothes away because he had just recovered from a serious illness and wanted to change his mood. He didn't expect this to be the reason behind it. That day, Xianxia also arrived outside Princely Mansion and saw this scene. After leaving, she went to a remote alley and personally killed a few cultivators. She dismembered their corpses and chopped them into a pile of mush. Only then did she stop. Wuxia spoke slowly, but the content made one's heart skip a beat. Father, do you think that this is also a coincidence? Emperor Zhou finally couldn't sit still and suddenly stood up. Where did you find out about this? Wuxia calmly smiled. Father, if I don't even know who went to Princely Mansion and what kind of attitude they had toward me in the Imperial City, how can I continue living? Emperor Zhou looked at him with a complicated gaze and didn't say anything for a while. Yeah, I almost forgot. Even though Wuxia's body was weak, he was very smart. He had stayed in Mingyue Tianshan for so many years. If he didn't even have this bit of ability, it would really disappoint him. Those few people usually hang around the various casinos and brothels in the Imperial City, and they usually attract a lot of hate. After they died, nobody cared about them. This incident was suppressed just like that. However, if you want to confirm it, it's very easy. You don't have to say anything. I believe you. Emperor Zhou tiredly waved his hands and leaned against the chair. Wuxia kept quiet. The room fell into silence once again. Emperor Zhou's thoughts were in turmoil. Anyone would be able to tell that something was wrong with this matter. For so many years, Xianxia had always been high and mighty, gentle and elegant in everyone's eyes. But from this incident, it was obvious that she wasn't like that at all. In actual fact, after interacting with Xianxia these few days, he already had this feeling in his heart. However, he didn't expect her to be even more vicious than he imagined. Linking all of these incidents together, many doubts were instantly resolved. This means that Xianxia purposely targeted Lu Yu several times because her love turned into hatred? In this case, there would be a logical explanation for Xianxia's involvement in Wuxia's incident and her accusation of Chu Luyue for no reason. Wuxia lightly smiled. I didn't say that. Father, you have your own judgment of who's right and who's wrong. Emperor Zhou opened his eyes and looked at Wuxia with a deep gaze. I didn't expect that the first time you chose to confess to me was because of Chu Luyue. By saying all of this, Wuxia was undoubtedly admitting that he had his own power in the Imperial City. He was far from being as aloof from worldly affairs as he had shown before. He definitely knew that this was a huge taboo for emperors. Aren't you worried that I'll be wary of you? Asked Emperor Zhou word for word. The sunlight shone in from the window and reflected in Wuxia's eyes. He said, I'm just choosing the more important option after weighing the two options. And I'm his most important and only choice. Almost at the same time, Chu Luyue was waiting for Elder Yi in her yard. So many things happened the night before, so Xianxia would definitely point me out and expose everything to Emperor Zhou. Thus I was already prepared. However, I didn't expect it to be my mentor. Chu Luyue smiled and went up to him. Mentor, what brings you here? Elder Yi looked at her and suddenly asked in shock, when did you break through and become a rank 3 warrior? If I didn't remember wrongly, didn't this girl just become a stage 2 warrior during the Qingjiao competition? Why did she become so fast? Moreover, the aura on her body seemed to be different from before. If Elder Yi carefully checked Chu Liyue's Yuan Meridian, he would know that this slight change was caused by the upgrade of her Yuan Meridian. Chu Liyue's eyes curved into crescents. I just broke through 2 days ago. I learned quite a lot at Taiyin Academy's library, so I tried to break through recently. As expected, I succeeded. Elder Yi thought about it and felt that it made sense. He had long known that Chu Liyue had a lot of force in her body, so it was only a matter of time before she broke through. You're indeed my disciple. Haha. Upon seeing Elder Ye's happy face, Chu Liyue's lips curled up and she seemingly reminded him unintentionally, Why are you here today? Is there a reason why you came to find me today? Elder Ye's laughter suddenly stopped. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 436. Actually, he wasn't willing to make this trip. Chu Liyue was his only disciple and he couldn't wait to dote on her, let alone question her. But if he didn't ask, he wouldn't be able to answer to Emperor Zhou. After much thought, it was more suitable for him to do it. Elder Yi coughed. Girl, where were you last night? Chu Luiyue blinked. Of course I was at home. If not, where else could I be? Old Mr. Yi carefully observed her expression. He always knew that Chu Luiyue was stronger than what she showed. At the very least, she was above his standards in terms of medicine refinement. He knew very well that this girl had many secrets. But he didn't want to suspect her because of this. You should know that there was a fire in the palace yesterday, right? Chu Luiyue nodded and smiled. It's hard not to know about such a big fire, mentor. Elder Yi thought for a while and finally asked directly, what happened last night? What happened yesterday, did it have anything to do with you? Chu Luiyue blinked. What do you mean? Elder Yi stared at her closely and after a while he couldn't help but slap his thigh. I knew that Xianxia did it on purpose. Tell me what exactly happened. Why did she want to kill you? Chu Luiyue was speechless. Even though she knew that Elder Yi would side with her, this was too straightforward. Chu Luiyue lightly coughed. It's a long story. Make it short. He still has to rush back to discuss this with Emperor Zhou. Chu Luiyue shrugged. She thinks that I snatched her man. Elder Ye's expression instantly became strange and he was even a little speechless. Wrong Xiao. Chu Luiyue nodded. Xianxia personally told me last night. How could it be wrong? Elder Yi suddenly took a step back and sized up Chu Luiyue. Mentor, what are you looking at? Asked Chu Luiyue strangely. Elder Yi suddenly chuckled. No wonder. No wonder. So, it's because of this that Xianxia kept trying to drag you down. Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. For some reason she seemed to hear a whiff of smugness. Enough. Master already knows. Just focus on your cultivation at home. There was no need to care about anything else. Old Man Yi said and turned to leave. Suddenly he turned his head and asked. By the way, did Mu Qinghe say when she was leaving? Mu Qinghe's eyes moved slightly, but she quickly suppressed the slight ripples and shook her head gently. Not yet. But it should be soon. Mu Qinghe had gained nothing from the trip to the Imperial Mausoleum, so she definitely wouldn't stay for long. Old Man Yi nodded. His expression became more serious as he warned, going to the Tianling dynasty is a great opportunity. You must make good use of it. But, the rest of his words were stuck in his throat. Elder Yi hesitated for a while and finally swallowed them back down. If you want to leave, you must inform Master in advance. Chu Luiyue nodded. Today was the day of the Empress's funeral. Originally, everything was well prepared, but the sudden fire in the Blessing and Harmony Palace caused everyone to be in a state of panic. Even though Emperor Zhou was very sad, he still decided to keep the Empress's funeral simple. In the end, only the noble consort's funeral was held. Emperor Zhou collapsed from excessive worry, so he couldn't attend the Empress's funeral. Rongjin suffered consecutive blows and was bedridden. He didn't even leave Crown Prince Mansion's doors. Oh, now that the plaque had been removed, it couldn't be considered Crown Prince Mansion anymore. In the end, only Prince Ping Rongqi and Rongjin went. But out of the two of them, one had been a rich man's son for many years and didn't have any real power, while the other had a shattered pearl of essence and was completely useless. Even if they were added together, they didn't have much of a presence. As for the Xi family, only a few people went. The Empress's entire funeral was very simple. It started in a hurry and ended in a hurry. At this point, everyone could tell that Emperor Zhou did this on purpose. As the Empress, she was the country's mother. After her death, she should hold a national funeral to show her status. But now, the funeral wasn't even as grand as a consort's. If the Empress didn't do something to anger His Majesty when she was alive, why would she have such an ending after her death? All sorts of rumors circulated on the streets, but they all silently disappeared in the end. Not long later, the crowd threw the Empress's death to the back of their minds and started discussing another matter. The Crown Prince position is empty, and His Majesty will definitely choose a new Crown Prince from the few princes. Emperor Zhou didn't have many sons, but there weren't many who were suitable to be the Crown Prince. After much discussion, the crowd finally realized that the best candidate was the third prince, Rongjio. In terms of capabilities, he entered the Northwest Army and fought on the battlefield for many years. He had many outstanding military achievements. In terms of age, he was in his prime. He was also the second-ranked prince after Rongjin. Other than his low birth status, he had almost no flaws. Almost everyone was certain that Rongjie would become the new crown prince. But the current Rongjie wasn't so optimistic. This was because he had already been locked up in the residence for a few days. The empress's funeral had already ended, but father still hadn't let him go. This inevitably made Rongjie worried. At this point he suddenly heard that father urgently summoned Rongjie into the palace. It seemed like the two of them had talked for a long time in the imperial study. The longer he waited, the more uneasy Rongjie felt. Finally, on this day someone came to the palace. The empress was killed by the third prince, Rongjie. From today onwards he will be locked up in the heavenly prison and await his punishment. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Net. Chapter 437. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Rongjie was originally the most suitable crown prince among the few princes, and many people had already secretly started thinking about how to get close to him. They didn't expect him to be imprisoned for such a heinous crime overnight. At that moment the entire imperial city changed. I heard that the third prince's birth mother, noble Lady Ying, was harmed by the empress back then. He held a grudge for many years, so he took action against her. Who knows about the harem? But even if it's true, the third prince is too impulsive. As long as he can become the crown prince, he can do whatever he wants. Why did he have to take action at this juncture? After the Northwest Army came back, His Majesty didn't let him go back for a long time, so he's naturally anxious. Besides, the Empress's funeral was so simple. Can't you see the problem? Even if His Majesty hates the Empress, he can't let the third prince kill her. He deserves it. These few princes are either crippled, locked up, or sick. If this continues, there's nothing to pick on. When Chu Liwei walked past the streets, she could vaguely hear some whispers. Even though they weren't allowed to talk about it openly, it was hard for people not to notice with so many things happening in the palace. When she arrived at Princely Mansion, she realized that the security here was obviously much tighter. Chu Liwei raised her eyebrows slightly. The entire imperial city was in chaos, and it wasn't easy for Princely Mansion to stay out of it. Seeing Chu Liwei, the guards at the door hurriedly welcomed her. "Ms. Li, you're finally here. His Highness has been waiting for you for a while." Chu Liu's lips curled up slightly as she walked in. When she saw Rongjie, he was taking a nap in the backyard's bamboo forest. On the stone table were 2 cups of freshly brewed tea and a half-finished chess game. A light breeze blew over, and a few green bamboo leaves landed on Rongjie's snow-white robe, making him look even colder and more noble. "Your Highness, you knew I was coming?" Chu Liwei brushed away the leaves in front of his eyes and walked over. Rongjie picked up the porcelain cup that was as clear as jade. A white mist rose in spirals, making it almost impossible to see the expression in his deep eyes. His scarlet lips curled up slightly, and his smile was as gentle and calm as ever. "This is the tea that I personally brewed. Let's see how it compares to yours." Chu Liwei sat down and picked up another cup. A strong fragrance wafted over, lingering at the tip of his nose, refreshing his mind. Chu Liwei took a sip. After the faint bitterness, there was a sweet aftertaste. She nodded honestly. "Your Highness' cooking skills are much better than mine." Compared to him, the ones she had picked up were really not worth mentioning. Rongjie smiled and shook his head. "But this prince only likes yours ginger tea." "The tea is good, but I don't like it." Chu Liwei glared at him. "Your Highness is still in the mood to joke at a time like this?" "That's exactly what I was thinking." Rongjie raised his brows. "Also, what do you mean by this time?" Chu Liwei narrowed his eyes. "The entire imperial city is in a mess, but only this person can leisurely brew tea and play chess in his own backyard. He's really calm." She shook her head and cut to the chase. "You already knew that His Majesty was going to do something to the third prince?" Previously, Rongjie had mentioned that someone wanted to frame Rongjie and blame him for the Empress's death. However, Chu Liwei never expected that person to be Emperor Zhou. No matter what, Rongjie is his biological son. His actions are no different from sending Rongjie to his death. Rongjie's expression didn't change, and his lips curled up into a casual smile. Since you know what's going on, why do you have to ask me?" "This is an admission." Chu Liwei knitted his brows and was still confused. "But why did His Majesty do this?" If he didn't want Rongjio to inherit the throne, he had many ways. At the very least, Rongjio was trapped in the imperial city and had almost all of his military power confiscated. He couldn't do anything. Besides, Rongjio had fought on the battlefield for many years and had many achievements. Even without his identity as a prince, his contributions were still significant. Why must Emperor Zhou be so ruthless? His Majesty knows that the person who killed the Empress is Zhou Xian. Until now, this news had been tightly sealed. Are you suspecting that father is siding with Zhou Xian? Asked Rongjio with interest. Chu Luiyue shook his head. Judging from the situation that night, Emperor Zhou definitely didn't want to let Zhou Xian off. He just wanted to get something from her. However, there's really no need to frame Rongjio for the Empress's death. She knew very well that the royal family was heartless, and she even had an unforgettable painful memory. However, Emperor Zhou clearly had other motives for doing this. Rongjio smiled lightly. If he knows his place and is an idle prince in the imperial city, father naturally won't do anything to him. He can make father decide to do this. Looking at his meaningful expression, Chu Luiyue suddenly understood something. Your Highness, you mean that the third prince? Rongjio placed a chess piece down. Chu Luiyue looked down and his heart skipped a beat. Once this piece was placed, the originally deadlocked black and white chess pieces on the chessboard instantly broke the stalemate. They crazily fought each other. Rongjio actually wants to rebel? If not, I really can't think of any other reason for Emperor Zhou to do this. Your Highness, how did you know? Once Chu Luiyue asked this, he couldn't help but regret it. As long as Rongjio wants to, he can know everything. However, Rongjio's expression became strange. Chu Luiyue looked at his eyes and suddenly widened her eyes in shock as she thought of something. Could it be? Rongjio looked at her with a deep gaze, and his lips suddenly curved up as he waved at her. Come over. Chu Luiyue stood up in confusion and walked over. Rongjio held her hand, pulled her into his embrace and tightly hugged her as he bent down and kissed her. Chu Luiyue was taken aback and her heart trembled slightly from his scorching aura. What's wrong with this person? Why is he so sudden? Why, Your Highness? Chu Luiyue pushed his shoulders, but he hugged her waist very tightly as if he wanted to embed her in his embrace. Rongjio only stopped when he kissed her until her limbs turned weak and she melted into a puddle of spring water in his arms. He then switched to a light kiss. Chu Luiyue looked at him, and her eyes that were as bright as the night sky became moist, as if a pinch would overflow with sweetness. Rongjio's eyes flashed and he reached out to cover her eyes. He moved closer to her ear and said in a low and hoarse voice, as if something was rubbing against his heart. Don't look at this prince like that. Chu Luiyue's ears also heated up. Your Highness. You knows this prince best. Rongjio suddenly couldn't help but bite her delicate earlobe. Chu Luiyue felt itchy but her body went soft. Rongjio buried his face in her neck and closed his eyes. She always knew what he was thinking. From the past to the present. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 438. Chu Luiyue naturally didn't know what Rongjio was thinking. His hot breath landed on her neck and behind her ears, making her feel itchy. The breeze blew and the bamboo forest swayed. Chu Luiyue instantly became much more awake. No wonder Rongjio kept looking at the entire imperial city's military strength distribution. It turns out that he had long been preparing for this day. Rongjio had stayed in the imperial city for a few months and didn't even leave the city. Now that he suddenly decided to rebel, someone was clearly adding fuel to the fire. And this person was Rongjio. Your Highness, when did you start planning all this? Chu Luiyue couldn't help but ask. Rongjio's low voice sounded by her ear. Oh, it's quite early. When did third brother go to the Northwest Army? His tone was casual and calm as if this was just a small matter. Chu Luiyue was shocked and pushed him away. She looked back and stared at Rongjio in disbelief with her black eyes. Your Highness, you mean, but he didn't ask to go. Chu Luiyue's words stopped abruptly. Suddenly, an extremely absurd idea appeared in her mind. Rongjio saw her rare shocked look and a smile flashed across his eyes. It's not easy to see her reveal such an expression. Seeing his expression, Chu Luiyue opened her mouth, but she didn't say a word. What else do I have to say? He's clearly admitting it. All these years, Rongjiu's every move was actually under Rongxiu's control. No matter if it was his determination to join the army after being bullied by the Empress and the Crown Prince, his outstanding military achievements, or his current situation where he had nowhere to go, it was clearly all in Rongxiu's plan. But it's dangerous to nurture a tiger. Now Rongjiu wants to go against Emperor Zhou, but he'll definitely become Rongxiu in the end. Chu Liuyue's heart was in turmoil and she finally couldn't help but ask, "Did you tell His Majesty that the third prince was going to rebel?" Rongxiu's brows moved slightly. "You're underestimating father. Since third imperial brother had done this, how could imperial father not have noticed? I don't have much to do with this matter. I'd be a fool if I believed you." Chu Liyue cursed in her heart. Perhaps Rongxiu also had a part to play in Rongjiu's plan to attack. Third prince doesn't know about this? Rongxiu raised his brows slightly. "What do you think?" Chu Liyue gasped and slapped her forehead. My brain short-circuited too. If Rongxiu knew it, the Northwest Army's 5,000 elites are about to reach the imperial city. Rongxiu gently caressed her slender and soft waist as he nonchalantly said, "As for when they'll fight, it depends on father and third brother. According to Rongjiu's personality, they shouldn't wait for long. Besides, father will punish Rongjiu in the next few days." Chu Liyue put her hand down, opened her eyes and looked at him. "Isn't all of this in your hands, Your Highness? Today, everything is under Rongxiu's control." Rongxiu chuckled. "If I didn't hear wrongly, are you praising me?" Chu Liyue was speechless. Is the praise more important than the matter itself? Country Yaochen is about to change. However, Rongxiu didn't seem to care about it. Looking at her shocked and confused face, Rongxiu laughed for a while before finally saying, Don't worry. Lord Chuning will be leaving the imperial capital with a group of people today to investigate some matters. If the Imperial Guards and the Northwest Army fight, Lord Chuning won't be implicated. Did he purposely send father away for me?" Her conversation with Rongxiu contained too much joy. Chu Liyue's mind was filled with thoughts and she didn't know what to say for a moment. She looked at Rongxiu with a complicated gaze. This man was devilishly handsome, extremely talented and terrifyingly scheming. But he just had to be so honest with her that she didn't know how to face him. He had plotted for so many years and played such a big game of chess, yet he told her so easily. "Your Highness, aren't you worried that I'll tell others about this?" asked Chu Liyue with knitted brows. Rongxiu looked at her in shock as if she had asked a very stupid question. Which woman in this world would put the man she loves in danger? Chu Liyue was speechless. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with this sentence, but why does it sound so strange? Chu Liyue stuttered, and her usually eloquent tongue seemed to be in a knot at this point. After a while she finally decided to give up and not harp on this matter. However, she still had the strangest and most important question. "Your Highness, why are you doing this?" One was his father and the other was his brother. In their bones the same blood flowed in their veins. Rongxiu's actions were equivalent to starting a fight between Emperor Zhou and Rongxiu. A war was about to break out. No matter who won or lost in the end, what was the point to Rongxiu? Rongxiu thought for a moment and chuckled. "Oh, I just felt that it was too troublesome to fight for it, so I found someone to do it for me." Chu Liyue was dazed. He did it for me. He's talking about fighting for the throne, right? How can he replace something like this? Besides, the most important thing is that if Rongxiu really wanted the throne, why did he have to pretend to be sick for so many years? According to Emperor Zhaowen's love for him, as long as Rongxiu displayed his true abilities, just a small portion of his abilities, Emperor Zhaowen would definitely make him the crown prince. Chu Liyue actually wanted to ask, but for some reason she had a strong feeling that it was best not to ask. Rongxiu must have his reasons for doing this. After reacting for a while, Chu Liyue finally found her voice. "But if that's the case, won't the throne be the third prince's?" A faint smile appeared on Rongxiu's face, but there was an indescribable suppression in his eyes. He slowly said, Who do you think helped third brother contact the Northwest Army and made him take the last pill of confidence and decide to mobilize the army? Of course, it's my people." Emperor Zhaowen gathered all the officials to discuss Rongjiu's punishment. After an intense debate, they finally came to a conclusion. The third prince, Rongjio, has committed treason. He took the chance when Emperor Zhou asked him to take care of the empress, harmed the empress and tried to destroy the corpse. His crimes are utterly devoid of conscience and the heavens cannot tolerate it. He will be beheaded at the Meridian Gate. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 439. Early in the morning, the imperial city's streets and alleys were filled with people. Whether it was out of curiosity, pity or some other reason, everyone rushed to the Meridian Gate. The execution ground was tightly guarded by armored imperial guards. Rongjio had not been brought over, but the surroundings were already filled with people. It was very noisy. This third prince has made great contributions in the Northwest Army a few years ago. He's very impressive. Who would have thought that he would become a prisoner in the blink of an eye? His achievements are enough to intimidate the emperor. He hasn't even stepped out of the imperial city's gates these few months. Isn't it obvious what the higher-ups are thinking? From what I see, the crime is fake and the execution is real. But among the remaining princes, the third prince is the most suitable candidate for the crown prince. Isn't it too heartless to do this? How much do we know about the palace? Anyway, that person is still in his prime. After a few more years, the princes below him will also grow up, right? It's a pity that the third prince's birth mother has already passed away, and he doesn't have a high status. At this time, there's no one who can help him. The crowd discussed fervently and they had different opinions about this matter. However, everyone knew that everything was already set in stone by now. Time passed bit by bit and the sun gradually rose to the middle of the sky. Suddenly, the originally noisy crowd quietened down. The crowd split into two sides and a path opened up. Everyone seemed to have sensed something and they all looked over at the same time. A group of people on horses walked over. The person in front was the Xi family head, Xi Yi. He was clearly here today to supervise the execution. Compared to the past, the current Xi Yi looked much more haggard. His cheeks were deeply sunken and his eyes were bloodshot. It was obvious that the things that happened during this period of time had a big impact on him. After all, the Empress Xi Huijing was his biological sister. He had just finished the Empress's funeral and he had to come here immediately after. He didn't even have time to rest. Xi walked forward step by step. He could clearly feel the countless gazes around him landing on his body. But in actual fact, his body and mind were numb. Originally, he didn't want to come, but His Majesty had given the order, so he could only follow it. A prison wagon slowly followed behind him. The disheveled man in the metal cage was the current third prince, Rongjio, who was wearing a prisoner's uniform and had his hands locked. He was forced to kneel there with his head slightly lowered. His messy hair fell down and covered most of his face. However, everyone could still vaguely see his current expression. Indifferent and cold. His body even carried a valiant aura that could only be obtained after experiencing life and death on the battlefield. In short, there was no trace of panic or despair. Around the prison cart, there were also imperial guards following closely. However, all those people combined couldn't even compare to Rongjio's aura. Probably affected by some kind of emotion, the places where the prisoner carriage passed by became incomparably quiet. The people standing in front of him even unconsciously took a step back. This third highness for some reason looked a bit inexplicably scary. When they arrived at the execution ground, Xi Yi raised his hand and the prison cart finally stopped. "Bring him here." With an order, the imperial guards at the side immediately went forward and brought Rongjio out of the metal cage. Two extremely sharp swords were pressed against Rongjio's neck as they brought him to the execution ground in the middle. From start to end, Rongjio's expression didn't change much. But when he stood still at the execution ground, he suddenly looked up and glanced in the direction of the palace as mockery flashed across his eyes. It seems like father won't change his decision. Today he was determined to put him to death. Rongjio retracted his gaze and looked down to hide the murderous intent in his eyes. Unless it was his last resort, he actually didn't want to do this. However, he had been on the battlefield for many years and had experienced countless life and death situations. He didn't expect that he would end up with such an outcome. Anyone would feel hopeless if they were in his shoes. "Hurry up and kneel," yelled the person behind Rongjio impatiently as he harshly kicked Rongjio's knees. However, Rongjio didn't kneel down from the kick. His physical body was as hard as a piece of steel. Seeing that Rongjio didn't kneel down as he wanted, the man who kicked him was shocked. Rongjio slowly turned around and glanced at him. The man immediately felt guilty under her gaze, and an inexplicable trace of fear appeared in his heart. Then he frowned and hollered, "What? What are you looking at? Do you think you're the high and mighty third prince? He's just a criminal on death row, yet he's still so arrogant when he's about to die. Kneel down." That man gave the person beside him a look, and the two of them exerted their strength. The two long swords instantly slit Rongjio's neck and red blood slowly seeped out. The last bit of hesitation in Rongjio's heart finally disappeared. He slightly bent his knees as if he was really going to kneel down. However, in the next moment his body suddenly leaped up and kicked the two people closest to him. His actions were too fast, and the two of them didn't even have time to react before they were harshly kicked away by Rongjio. Yi immediately realized something and hollered, "Capture! Capture him! Rongjio actually wants to escape." The surrounding crowd also reacted at this point and rushed forward. An enormous figure suddenly appeared above Rongjio's head. Yi looked over and was shocked. It was a fourth-grade fiend, a white thatched falcon. Well, that white thatched falcon suddenly spread its wings. Rongjio flipped over and jumped onto it. "Go!" Following a clear cry, the white thatched falcon flapped its wings and flew into the sky. At this point the surrounding crowd finally understood that it was Rongjio's fiend. When he was locked up in the prison he didn't have anything else on him other than his prison clothes. But they actually forgot that he had his own fiend. Rongjio had been very low profile these few months in the Imperial City, so they actually forgot that he had such a trump card. Even though this white thatched falcon was a fourth-grade fiend, it was ferocious and had strong combat skills. It was almost considered the top among the fourth-grade fiends. The human and fiends figures quickly flew into the distance. Yi immediately said, "Prepare. Prepare your bows." The many Imperial guards immediately took out the bows on their backs and aimed at Rongjio in midair. However, right at this moment, a few figures suddenly charged out from the crowd, and they charged towards the Imperial guards. Choo-choo. Messy air-piercing sounds were heard, and many of them deviated from their original directions. They didn't even touch the edges of the white thatched falcon's wings. Yi looked at the people who suddenly rushed over in shock and anger, and he suddenly widened his eyes in shock. They actually took the initiative to use their killer move. They came prepared. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 440. The crowd instantly fell into chaos. Those people were wearing very normal clothes, and they looked no different from the commoners who were here to join in the fun. It was precisely because of this that their actions were especially sudden. Yi roughly glanced at them and there were at least hundreds of them. These people were clearly here for Rongjio. More importantly, from the ruthless moves of these people, it was obvious that they were trained on the battlefield. Yi suddenly understood something and gasped. "Rongjio actually mobilized the Northwest Army to save me. Didn't they say that he handed over his military power after returning to the Imperial City and didn't contact the Northwest Army again? What exactly is going on with these people's appearance?" In just an instant, screams, weapons clashing, and the sound of sharp weapons piercing into flesh were all mixed together. Countless people screamed and escaped. Yi was about to chase after Rongjio when two people suddenly rushed over from the side and directly blocked his path. The next moment they actually attacked before Yi did. Yi was forced into a chaotic battle. The two parties had just exchanged a few moves and he knew that things were bad. These people all killed their way out of a pile of corpses. Even if their cultivation levels weren't as high as his, they were the best at killing people. Once they attacked, every move was fatal. There were no tricks at all. In the midst of the chaos, Yi looked around and realized that things were exactly as he had expected. The Imperial Guards, who had the advantage in numbers, were gradually at a disadvantage. He flung something out of his sleeves without hesitation. Bang! A signal shot up to the sky. At the same time, Emperor Zhou was reading something alone in the Imperial study. But after taking 2 glances he stopped and rubbed his glabella. Calculating the time, it should be about time. Suddenly Eunuch Min's anxious voice was heard from outside the door. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Something happened." Emperor Zhaowen's heart skipped a beat as he walked over and personally opened the door. He frowned and asked, "What exactly happened?" Eunuch Min was shocked as he hurriedly took a step back and knelt down. "Your Majesty, the third prince ran away." Emperor Zhaowen's expression turned even colder. "What do you mean he ran away? What is Siyi doing? Where are the imperial guards?" Eunuch Min wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead and quickly said in a trembling voice, "That's right. Your Majesty, someone has blended into the crowd and started fighting with the imperial guards. They escorted the third prince away." The ominous feeling in Emperor Zhaowen's heart intensified. This is the imperial capital. Who would help him like this? They seem to be the Northwest Army. Bang! Emperor Zhaowen kicked Eunuch Min's heart. Trash. Eunuch Min fell to the ground with a dull pain in his chest. He spat out a mouthful of blood. However, Emperor Zhaowen had already strode outside. "Send more men immediately. Seal the city gates. Not only Rongjio, but we can't let anyone related to this incident go." Eunuch Min endured the pain and hurriedly followed. Yes. Emperor Zhaowen's face darkened. As expected, Rongjio had already secretly contacted the Northwest Army. He had even made such preparations. He planned to escape from the execution ground. Previously, there were even people who wanted to make him the crown prince. What a joke. Rongjio was very ambitious. How could he be willing to be a prince with no real power? Once he became the crown prince, he might not be able to sit on the throne. Emperor Zhaowen was walking forward when someone hurriedly rushed over and directly knelt in front of him. "Your Majesty." Upon seeing this person, Emperor Zhaowen's expression changed. If it weren't for something major, this person definitely wouldn't have appeared here. As expected, that person's next sentence made him feel like he was struck by lightning. Wei Lin led the Northwest Army soldiers here, and they're already 20 miles away from the imperial capital's gate. They said that the third prince had contributed greatly to the country of Yaochen and had always been loyal to you. Now you're listening to the slanderous words of a villain and want to execute him. This really hurt the hearts of countless soldiers guarding the borders. So they're here to ask you to clear the third prince's name. Emperor Zhaowen's figure swayed. Northwest Army's Wei Lin, aren't they Rongjio's men? How is this clearing Rongjio's name? They're clearly rebelling. This place is thousands of miles away from the borders, and it takes at least 3 to 4 days for a message to travel back and forth. However, the imperial edict to kill Rongjio was only issued yesterday. These people came so quickly, which means that they arrived long ago. Now they actually have the cheek to accuse me? Eunuch Min hurriedly went forward to support Emperor Zhaowen, but Emperor Zhaowen flung him away. The next moment, Emperor Zhaowen harshly slapped the person kneeling in front of him. That man's face was instantly slapped to the side. His cheeks rapidly swelled up. However, he immediately bowed and kowtowed. "Your Majesty, please calm down. It's all my fault. You actually only discovered such an important matter now? What use do I have for you?" Emperor Zhaowen's hand was completely numb from the slap, but his chest was still filled with anger and his face was green. "Your Majesty, those people seem to have come in batches. They only gathered again after all of them arrived. That's why I didn't discover them in time. What kind of place is the imperial capital? We're in charge of guarding the city gates, so how dare we slack off? However, those people from the Northwest Army are too sneaky. We didn't even realize it previously. When we realized that something was amiss, it was already too late." "How many people did they send?" asked Emperor Zhaowen as he took a deep breath. "Around 5,000. Emperor Zhaowen panted. 5,000 imperial guards are nothing to worry about. Where's Chuning? Get him to bring people over immediately." "Your Majesty, did you forget that you just sent Lord Chuning out of the city yesterday?" reminded Eunuch Min carefully. Emperor Zhaowen was dazed. He then remembered that he seemed to have found some news related to the bronze vat outside the imperial capital, so he had already sent Chuning to investigate. They weren't even in the imperial capital now. "Let Zhaoming take over. You immediately gather the imperial guards. You must stop them outside the imperial capital's gates. There are more than 10,000 imperial guards, so it shouldn't be a problem to deal with 5,000 people." The man kneeling on the floor seemed to have seen through Emperor Zhaowen's thoughts as he braced himself. "Your Majesty, the imperial guards are scattered all over the imperial capital. It's already difficult to gather them immediately. The most important thing is that the people who came seem to be the Northwest Army's elites. It's not that I'm afraid, but I know too well how troublesome this situation is. How could a person who could survive on the battlefield be compared to these pampered Imperial guards in the Imperial capital? If there's no other way, the city gates will fall in no time. Digression. The plot is stuck and it's very difficult to write. I'll go back and sort out the plot. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 441. It was early winter in the Imperial City and the wind was biting cold. Outside the city gates, the soldiers from both sides were in a standoff. Time passed bit by bit and the afterglow shone down. Outside the city gates, 5,000 elites stood in formation, filled with a strong murderous aura. After looking at them for a long time, one could almost smell the sand and blood mixed in the air. The Imperial guards on the city walls were fully armed. A tall man dressed in black armor stood in the middle of the group. This person was the deputy commander of the Imperial Guards, Zhao Ming. Chu Ning was not around, so he took on the task at the last moment and became the commander of the Imperial Guards. His eyes were fixed on the front as he shouted in a deep voice. "Where is the Northwest Army's Deputy General, Wei Lin?" His low and powerful voice instantly spread far and wide. A man in red armor took a step forward. "I'm here." It was an extremely muscular man who looked no more than 30 years old. He had a beard on his face and looked very fierce. Zhao Ming took a deep breath. Wei Lin was very famous in the Northwest Army. He was violent and strong. Moreover, he was a stage 5 warrior who fought his way out on the battlefield. Just by himself he could take on 100 people by himself. Not to mention the thousands of soldiers behind him who were obviously not easy to deal with. Rongjia was fully prepared this time. According to Yao Chen's laws, the deputy general can't leave the army without His Majesty's orders. He can't bring soldiers into the Imperial City. "Wei Lin, are you rebelling?" Wei Lin laughed. "Zhao Ming, it's fine if you're not strong enough, but it turns out that your brain is useless too. I've already said that this is not a rebellion. It's just that His Majesty's actions toward the third prince are unreasonable. He even hurt the hearts of the Northwest Army's soldiers. We're only here to help His Highness the third prince and to seek justice for ourselves." Zhao Ming was about to retort when he suddenly saw a commotion in the crowd opposite him. Then it suddenly split in the middle. A man walked out from the middle. He was wearing armor and his face was solemn and majestic. It was Rongjia. Zhao Ming's heart sank. Rongjia indeed successfully escaped. After the riot at the execution ground, the Imperial Guards were collectively mobilized to search for Rongjia's whereabouts in the entire Imperial City. However, they did not find anything until he arrived. It turned out that Rongjia had already left the Imperial City during the chaos. At this time, the prison clothes and shackles on his body were long gone. He was dressed in martial attire and looked bloody and fierce. "Greetings, Your Highness." Wei Lin cupped his fists and bowed. The soldiers behind him immediately shouted in unison. "Welcome back, Your Highness." Their shouts shook the heavens. Rongjia raised his palm and immediately suppressed the voice. When Zhao Ming and the other Imperial Guards saw this scene, they were all shocked. The fact that Rongjia could do this was enough to show his prestige in the military. No wonder he dared to do this. Rongjia looked at Zhao Ming expressionlessly. "Zhao Ming, I don't want to hurt the innocent, so I'll give you a chance. Open the city gate. Otherwise, don't blame I for being merciless." How could Zhao Ming do it? "Your Highness, doing such a rebellious thing, in the end he would be spurned by the world. I advise you to repent and be saved. Return with me now and apologize to His Majesty." Rongjia sneered. "I have already been labeled as a rebellious person. Since that's the case, I might as well fulfill this label." A trace of uneasiness surged in Zhao Ming's heart. "I joined the army when I was 14 years old and fought on the battlefield for many years, killing countless enemies. There are a total of 23 scars on my body and every one of them is fatal. I have made great contributions to country Yao Chen, but in the end, all I received was a prison uniform and countless crimes." If he admitted it, how could he be reconciled? Apologize. The person sitting on the dragon throne now did not have the qualifications to order him around from a high position. Zhao Ming said in a deep voice. "Your Highness, you Before he could finish speaking, he saw Rongjio raise his hand high. Then it fell harshly. The first person to break the city gate today will be promoted by 3 levels. 1,000 taels of gold. A low and powerful voice instantly sounded. The countless Northwest Army soldiers behind him instantly became excited. They raised their arms and shouted in unison. Kill, kill, kill. Wei Lin looked up and laughed. Ha! Brats, didn't you hear what His Highness said? This time I won't go easy on you. The city gate. Let me take it. Then Wei Lin's figure instantly rushed out. When one person moved, 1,000 people followed. Seeing Wei Lin go straight to the city gate, the people behind him followed one after another. Rongjio suddenly pulled out the padao that he always carried with him. The sound of the padao rang out. The wind howled. The next moment he tipped his toes and personally attacked. Today he would return all the humiliation and torture that he had suffered in the imperial city. Zhao Ming immediately said, "Release the arrows." The imperial guards hidden behind the battlements of the city wall drew their bows in unison. Countless black iron arrows pierced through the air. The two sides were completely engaged in a battle. When the city gate was in a tense situation, the imperial city was also in chaos. Even though a portion of the imperial guards were responsible for guarding, the people's hearts were in chaos. The streets and alleys were in a mess and almost no one appeared. Everyone was hiding in their own homes. After Rongjin was removed from his position, everyone thought that Rongjio would naturally be made the new crown prince. Who knew that not only did he not become the crown prince, but he even directly started a rebellion. However, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Rongjio had long made preparations. If not, he wouldn't be able to gather the Northwest Army in such a short period of time. For a moment, the crowd couldn't tell if Emperor Zhou let Rongjio down first or if Rongjio started the rebellion first. However, Chu Liyue didn't have time to care about all this at this point. This was because Mu Qinghe personally came to her residence. In the room, Chu Liyue slightly widened her eyes. What? Leave now? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 442. Is there a problem? Asked Mu Qinghe coldly as she knitted her brows. The other side kept urging him to go back and he couldn't delay any longer. Besides, the injuries he suffered in the Imperial Mausoleum had mostly healed over the past 2 days. Now was the best time to go back. That's not it. Chu Liyue thought for a moment. It's just that the Imperial City's situation is a little special. Won't it seem strange if we leave now? The Northwest Army led by Rongjio has already started fighting with the Imperial Guards. It doesn't make sense for us to leave at this time. Besides, I already know that all of this is Rongjio's plan. How can I leave without seeing the results? Mu Qinghe lightly asked in return. Even if they start fighting, what does it have to do with us leaving? It's just a small fight. This small country Yaochen isn't even as big as a state under me. Chu Liyue instantly had the urge to facepalm. A small fight. The deaths of thousands of people and a country's political power were just a small fight in Mu Qinghe's eyes. However, with his status, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with saying this. The battles that Mu Qinghe had experienced were indeed much more dangerous and scary than this. No, Vice Admiral Mu. I think you've misunderstood me. Chu Liyue deliberated before speaking. I'm Prince Li's fiancé, so I'm considered part of the royal family. Now that something like this has happened, how can I just leave? At the very least, I have to wait until everything is settled. Mu Qinghe's expression turned even colder. Time is limited. Leave or stay. Choose one. Chu Liyue was in a dilemma. I must go to the Tianling dynasty. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If I follow Mu Qinghe back, not only will I be able to do it openly, but I can also hide my identity better. Moreover, it was very likely that they would directly come into contact with Jiang Yuqing and the others. Without this layer of relationship, even if she broke through to the 7th stage, entered the Heaven's Canopy and returned to the Tianling dynasty, the situation might not be better than now. But if he left now, what would happen to Rongjio? What about father? She wasn't worried that they wouldn't be able to protect her, but she hadn't explained anything yet. If she left with Mu Qinghe now, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble. Who knew when he would be able to come back after this trip? Or would he never come back? Chu Liyue pursed his lips tightly and didn't say anything for a while. Mu Qinghe, it's been so many years. Why don't you have any tender feelings for the fairer sex? A mocking and casual voice was heard. Chu Liyue looked up and saw Jian Fengqi. As he walked over, he smiled and said, Prince Li and Miss Chu just got engaged. They haven't even held their wedding ceremony yet. If you ask her to go back with you now, wouldn't you be breaking up the couple? It's so far away. It'll be difficult for the couple to see each other in the future. Mu Qinghe turned his face and looked at him expressionlessly. Jian Fengqi shrugged his shoulders. Not only did he not stop, but he even walked to Mu Qinghe's side and placed his arm on the latter's shoulder as he smiled charmingly. Anyway, the deadline has passed. The others who should go back have already gone back. It's too late for you to set off now. Why are you nervous for a day or two? In my opinion, why don't you do me a favor? Hey. Just talk. Why do you have to hit me? Jian Fengqi quickly broke free from Mu Qinghe's grip. He rubbed his wrist that was almost hit and took a few steps back. Fine. Anyway, it's your business. No one else can do anything about it, right? It'll be fine if I don't say anything. Chu Liyue was speechless. Jian Fengqi was a head taller than Mu Qinghe. He also looked tall and strong. Why was he so scared? Looking at this scene from the side, it was really strange. However, she quickly focused on some words in Jian Fengqi's sentence. Deadline? Could it be that there was a time limit for Mu Qinghe's trip this time? And why were there other people? It sounded like many people were going out at the same time to complete a mission. Could it be that they were going to find a cultivator with a Daijing Yuan meridian? Chu Liyue vaguely felt that something was not right. But looking at Mu Qinghe, it was obvious that he would not reveal anything. Mu Qinghe's expression was cold. I have to go back today. Jian Fengqi's expression changed slightly. Because his back was facing Chu Liyue, Chu Liyue did not see the change in his expression. But soon, Jian Fengqi's eyes regained their calmness. He crossed his arms, rubbed his chin and asked tentatively, Why don't you go back first? Why don't you go back first? Once this matter is settled, this young master will personally escort her back. As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Qinghe immediately said, No. Why not? Isn't this a very good suggestion? Jian Fengqi paused and looked meaningfully at Mu Qinghe. You're busy. You're just wasting time here. Since I'm free, why don't I look after her for a few days? With me around, do you think I'll let her be late? Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. Late? Was Mu Qinghe looking for her because he was in a hurry to go back? Miss Chu doesn't want to go back now. Isn't it too heartless of you to take her away by force? Jian Fengqi returned to his usual playful tone. But it was clear that he was serious about this proposal. Mu Qinghe's eyes flashed with a hint of contemplation. After a moment he finally said, 3 days at most. No problem. Jian Fengqi immediately agreed. Then he suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Chu Liyue. 3 days should be enough, right? Chu Liyue gently nodded. Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu, young Master Jian. She had a premonition that this battle would come to a conclusion in 3 days. What she needed to do was to make use of these 3 days to arrange everything properly. Mu Qinghe glanced at Chu Liyue. With a wave of his wrist, something flew out from his sleeve. Chu Liyue immediately caught it and looked down. This is my token. Take this and someone will bring you to me when the time comes. Then he didn't say anything else. With a thought, a long sword flew out and floated in front of him. With a leap, Mu Qinghe turned around and leapt on his sword. He was very fast and he disappeared from Chu Liyue's sight in the blink of an eye. Chu Liyue knitted his brows. Young Master Jian, did Vice Admiral Mu go back? Jian Fengqi retracted his gaze, and the emotions in his eyes quickly disappeared. He then changed into his usual carefree smile. He has things to do, so you don't have to worry about him. You, on the other hand, just let me know when you're ready. Chu Liyue's lips curved up. Thank you, young Master Jian. Jian Fengqi's smile deepened. Oh right, I heard that Emperor Zhaowen seems to be looking for a bronze cauldron these few days. Is that true? Chapter 443. Chu Liyue's eyebrows twitched. It seemed that Jian Fengqi hadn't been idle during his stay in the capital. He even knew about this. However, his strength was tyrannical. If he really wanted to investigate something, it was likely that not many people could stop him. Thus Chu Liwei quickly weighed the pros and cons in his heart and nodded honestly. Young Master Jian is well informed. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows and smiled ambiguously. It's a coincidence. I only found out about this by accident. It was on the day that the item was taken away. Chu Liyue's expression instantly froze. Young Master Jian knows who stole the bronze cauldron? Jian Fengqi's icy eyes flashed with a ripple of light. I said it earlier. I just happened to see it. Of course, that person's face was covered, so I didn't see it clearly. That meant that he really saw it. And it was actually a person. To be able to kill all the guards inside and outside Heptagon Alley in a very short period of time without even giving them the chance to ask for help, it was enough to show that the person must be a top expert. One must know that there were many rank 4 warriors among them. An ordinary rank 5 warrior would never be able to do this. Chu Liwei looked around vigilantly and lowered his voice. I wonder if young Master Jian can tell me in detail what that person looked like? I can only confirm that it was a man and a rank 6 warrior. As for the rest, I'm not sure. Then did you see where that person went with the bronze cauldron? This. Jian Fengqi paused for a moment and shrugged. I was just surprised that there was another rank 6 warrior here, so I took a second look. Who would care about that bronze cauldron? At that time he didn't know that it was so important. By the time he saw some clues, the other party had already disappeared. Chu Liwei could see that he was telling the truth and could only sigh helplessly. Anyway, thank you. Speaking of which, this matter had nothing to do with Jian Fengqi, so it was normal that he didn't care. However, if you really want to find that person, it's not like I can't help you. Chu Liwei was taken aback. Didn't you say that you didn't see clearly before? Jian Fengqi smiled wickedly. It seems that young Miss Chu doesn't remember what I do. Celestial physician, celestial physician. You left something on that person? Jian Fengqi knocked her head with his finger. Smart. Chu Liwei. If it was in the past he wouldn't have dared to be so impudent in front of her. But now it wasn't the time. Why do you want me to help you? In any case you still have 3 days. You have nothing to do anyway. Seeing Jian Fengqi's expression, Chu Liwei squinted her eyes. This person was still the same as before, eager to see the world in chaos. How was this helping her? He clearly wanted to join in the fun and watch her make a fool of herself. Chu Liyue's lips slowly curved into an extremely sincere smile. Of course. I'll have to trouble you with this matter, young Master Jian. When this matter is over, Lu Yu will definitely reward you handsomely. Jian Fengqi inexplicably shuddered. Chu Liwei, when she smiled, it was exactly the same as that person's. Every time he saw her smile like that, he felt that disaster was about to befall him. He didn't expect that even though that person was already dead, he still subconsciously felt awe when he saw that similar expression. The psychological trauma was really too great. Fine. I'll help you. Jian Fengqi hurriedly looked away and took 2 steps back, sizing up Chu Liwei. In fact, overall, whether it was their facial features or body shape, they didn't look very similar. However, he didn't know why, but when he looked at Chu Liwei he would think of that person from time to time. He didn't believe that Mu Qinghe didn't have such misconceptions. If you really go there. Jian Fengqi suddenly thought of something and muttered in a low voice. Chu Liwei didn't seem to understand his expression and asked gently, Where are we going? Jian Fengqi pointed in the direction Mu Qinghe left. Do you still remember this young master saying that you somewhat resemble an old friend? Chu Liwei nodded. If they see you they will definitely be very surprised. Jian Fengqi smiled brightly. He wasn't the only one who had such a psychological trauma. There was nothing to be ashamed of. But Zhang Yuqing and those people, he really didn't know how they would react when they saw Chu Liwei. It would definitely be very exciting. Thinking of that scene, Jian Fengqi felt that his entire body was healed. Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Since you're in such a hurry, I'll help you find him now. Then he took out a small bell. That bell was only the size of a thumb, and it was carved out of blue-green peacock stone. Through the hollow gap, one could see that there seemed to be something gently knocking against the bell, which made a crisp sound. Jian Fengqi focused on listening for a while, and a surprised expression appeared on his face as he looked at Chu Liwei. That person is still in the Imperial City. The atmosphere in the palace was even more tense than outside. In a dark dungeon somewhere, Xianxia was locked up again. Blessing Palace had already been burned down, and she was locked up somewhere else this time. However, Emperor Zhaoan specially ordered for more manpower. For 24 hours a day, there were always people guarding within 10 steps of Situ Xingqian, and they guarded her closely. One of Situ Xingqian's arms and legs were crippled, so she could only lie on the floor pathetically. She fainted and woke up a few times. Every time she hoped that she would be in a different place when she opened her eyes. But though, her heart was filled with despair. Even Elder Zhou Yi couldn't save me, let alone the others. I don't know what's going on with father, but there's still no news. I really didn't expect the third prince to really start a rebellion. I wonder if he'll fight his way to the palace. A worried voice could be heard. Situ Xingqian paused and realized that the few people in charge of guarding at the side were softly discussing something. Yeah. No wonder His Majesty was so wary of him previously and even sentenced him to death. It turns out that he already expected this day to come. So what? Didn't he still escape from the execution ground? I heard that there's already a fight outside the city gates. The Northwest Army's people don't care about their lives. They came prepared. From what I see, they have a high chance of winning. That might not be the case. Other than the Imperial Guards in the Imperial City, there are also the elites from the various aristocratic families. How can it be broken so easily? It's a pity that we have to continue guarding here. If not, we can also find a chance to, Before that person could finish his sentence, he suddenly let out a short scream. The remaining people did not even have time to react before their lives were harvested. Situ Xingqian immediately looked up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 444. A man in a long black robe appeared in front of her. The other party was wearing a black and red ghost mask, which almost covered his entire face. She could only see a pair of cold and indifferent brown eyes. He stood there and his entire body was enveloped in an extremely strong suppression. The few people who were still talking previously were all on the floor, motionless and completely dead. The thick smell of blood filled the air. Situ Xingqian held her breath and her hair stood on end. This man is very dangerous. Who are you? She instinctively touched her wrist, but she felt nothing. She then remembered that the bracelet had already been destroyed by Yi Zhiding. Now she had nothing on her that could be used to attack or defend. That man suddenly laughed and his voice was hoarse. You don't need to know who I am. You just need to know that I'm here to help you. Help me. Situ Xingqian knitted her brows. Who exactly are you? Why are you helping me? She was originally very suspicious, and her experiences over the past few days had almost tortured her to insanity. Hence, when she heard this, she was not happy at all. Instead, she felt even more uneasy. That man did not say anything as he waved his sleeves and a green glow flashed across. A bronze cauldron appeared in front of Situ Xingqian. At the edge there were still bloodstains that had long since dried up. Situ Xingqian took a closer look and her eyes shrunk. This is clearly the bronze cauldron in Heptagon Alley. But didn't I lose this thing previously? Why is it in this unfamiliar man's hands? Besides, he actually brought it over. What exactly do you want to do? It took Situ Xingqian a long time to find her voice. After a short silence, that man finally spoke. Don't you know very well what you should do? Situ Xingqian clenched her fists in her sleeves tightly. Don't say that you don't know. I know very well what you want to do. This thing was originally prepared for Rongjin, but it's a pity that that idiot still doesn't know what it is. Hence this belongs to you now. You really want to give this to me? No. It seems like you're not very willing. As the man spoke, he was about to move as if he was planning to retrieve the bronze cauldron. Situ Xingqian immediately shouted. Wait. She endured the pain in her body and limped over. She stared at the bronze vat for a while. What are your conditions? She didn't believe that he would help her for no reason. When the time is right, you will naturally know. The man seemed to be too lazy to pay attention to her and replied impatiently. Situ Xingqian did not dare to ask further as she slowly touched the bronze cauldron. However, just as she was about to touch him, she suddenly stopped and looked at her hand with resentment. It was withered and purplish, looking extremely terrifying. Other external wounds and even internal injuries could be healed in the end. However, the poison that entered the body was not that easy to remove. The more time passed, the more they accumulated. What if she couldn't return to normal after she got out? What should she do? I have a request. Xianxia mustered her courage and asked. My physical body is seriously injured and I've been poisoned. I wonder if you can help me? The man's gaze landed on her hands. Xianxia looked at him nervously. However, the man's tone was nonchalant. No. Then he turned around and left. Xianxia opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, the man's back view had already disappeared. She gritted her teeth. That person is very strong and his background is definitely not ordinary. How can he not do anything about the poison in my body? He just doesn't want to help. Xianxia suppressed her resentment and looked at the bronze cauldron again. The surroundings were dark and the bloodstains at the edges gave off a strange and eerie aura when one looked at them for a long time. Xianxia took a deep breath in and placed her hands on the bronze cauldron. The moment she touched it, the remaining bloodstains on her hands were instantly absorbed by the bronze cauldron. A strange, blood-red glow shot out from within and completely enveloped Xianxia. Chu Luiwei followed Jian Fengqi all the way. When Chu Luiwei realized that Jian Fengqi was also heading toward the palace, she finally knitted her brows and stopped. Jian Fengqi turned around and looked at her in confusion. What's wrong? Chu Luiwei glanced at the bell in his hands. This is Jian Fengqi's treasure and it almost never makes a mistake. Young Master Jian, that's the palace. Will that person still stay in the palace after stealing that thing? Jian Fengqi squinted his eyes. Do you not believe me? That's not it. Chu Luiwei paused. Just follow me. Don't worry. Since I promised to help you, I'll definitely help you until the end. Upon hearing Jian Fengqi's words, Chu Luiwei felt more at ease and continued to follow him. But when the two of them reached the palace walls and were about to think of a way to enter, Jian Fengqi suddenly raised his brows, placed the bell by his ear and listened carefully. Immediately his expression changed. He doesn't seem to be here anymore. What? Chu Luiwei looked around. At this time no one had passed by this place. Wasn't he here just now? How could he be over there? Jian Fengqi quickly turned around. Chu Luiwei naturally followed without hesitation. But after taking 2 steps she couldn't help but look back and her eyes darkened. After Jian Fengqi had walked for some distance he realized that Chu Luiwei was actually standing there, motionless. Don't you want to track that person down? Jian Fengqi teased. Chu Luiwei shook her head. Then she slowly said, why did that person first come to the palace and then leave? Jian Fengqi paused for a moment, then suddenly understood. You're saying that he purposely came to the palace? Chu Luiwei looked up and carefully stared at the tall palace walls as if she wanted to see through the walls and see everything that was happening inside. After a moment she finally made up her mind. I want to make a trip to the palace. I have a strong feeling in my heart that that man must have a motive for coming this time. In the palace, the only person closely related to the bronze cauldron is Emperor Zhou Xian. But just as Chu Luiwei was about to think of a way to enter, she was pulled back by Jian Fengqi. You're going in broad daylight? Chu Luiwei knitted her brows and was about to say something when she suddenly saw a firework appear in the faraway sky. The next moment it suddenly exploded. Bang! A fluttering military flag suddenly bloomed. Chu Luiwei's heart sank. The city gate has been broken. Digression. Later there is another update for mobile users. Please browse and read a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 445. This speed was even faster than Chu Luiwei had expected. I'm afraid that Rongjie will rush into the palace with his men in no time. Chu Luiwei's mind raced as she looked at Jian Fengqi and asked, where's that person? Where did that person go? Jian Fengqi pointed in a direction. Suddenly, the bell in his hand let out a crisp sound. Jian Fengqi instinctively threw the bell out. That item quickly broke into many pieces in midair. Then they all fell to the ground. It actually broke on its own. Jian Fengqi's fingers curled up slightly, and he could still feel a slight numbness on his fingertips. However, his mind was blank at this point. This. Chu Luiwei looked at him in understanding. Young Master Jian, it seems like your tracking skills aren't very good. The other party had clearly discovered me long ago. Jian Fengqi's usual smile had long disappeared, and he looked exceptionally cold and stern. He was clearly traumatized. Chu Luiyue rarely saw Jian Fengqi with such an expression. If she was free, she would definitely be very willing to admire his expression in detail. However, she was not in the mood now. The other party seemed to be targeting Jian Fengqi, but she knew in her heart that the other party's real motive was to lure her here. Every move that he made previously was on purpose. Jian Fengqi harshly closed his eyes. This was a huge humiliation to him. He had never suffered such a loss in all his years of life. You're really fast. If I find out who that person is, I definitely won't let him off. Chu Luiyue was also very curious about that person's identity, but the other party was one step ahead of her, so there was nothing she could do now. Since the other party spent so much effort to lure her here, wouldn't it be a pity if she didn't go in to take a look? Thinking of this, she turned around and left. Jian Fengqi was shocked. Huh? Hey, you're going back now? Didn't you want to go in just now? Chu Luiyue nodded. I want to go in. Then it's easy to get into trouble if we go in now. Let's wait for the right time. After saying that, Chu Luiyue's figure quickly disappeared from sight. Jian Fengqi thought that it made sense. He glanced at the blue bell fragments on the ground with heartache and resentment, then turned around and followed Chu Luiyue. At the same time, everyone in the imperial capital saw the military flag and realized that the city gate had been breached. In the palace, Emperor Zhou, a few family heads and other important people in the imperial court were all gathered at Qingqian Hall. Everyone was originally discussing how to deal with the Northwest Army's attack, but the loud noise from outside finally silenced the noisy Qingqian Hall. Everyone seemed to have sensed something and their expressions froze on their faces. Sure enough, someone came to report. Your Majesty, the city gate had been breached. The third prince has already led thousands of rebel soldiers into the imperial capital. The imperial capital was backed by a mountain range, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. The only way to break through was from the direction of the city gate. But now Rongjiu actually took such a short time to bring people in. First they broke through the city gate. Soon they would break through the palace gate. Everyone in the hall looked at Emperor Zhou and the surroundings were silent. Emperor Zhou was furious. Useless. The number of imperial guards is almost twice that of the rebel soldiers. How did this happen? The person who came to report could only speak with a trembling voice. Your Majesty, they seem to be very familiar with the imperial capital's military arrangements. That's why Officer Zhao Ming and the rest couldn't. The crowd looked at each other. The imperial capital's military arrangements were top secret, and not many people knew about it. How did Rongjiu get his hands on it? Digression. Tomorrow at 6:00 p.m., please browse for a better reading experience from Yuan. Chapter 446. Also, many aristocratic families in the imperial city seem to have submitted to the third prince. That person continued stuttering. Emperor Zhou froze on the spot as if he was struck by lightning. What do you mean? That person boldly looked up and scanned the surroundings before quickly looking down. Those aristocratic families' heads seemed to have discussed this with the third prince. After the rebel army entered the imperial city, they didn't meet with any obstructions. Actually, Emperor Zhou understood the meaning of this the moment he heard this. However, he felt that it was too ridiculous. As a result, he subconsciously didn't dare to believe it. There was dead silence in the palace. Emperor Zhou's vision turned black. How is that possible? I single-handedly supported all these aristocratic families. I definitely won't. Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly thought of something and suddenly looked at the crowd standing in the palace. Someone among you has long betrayed me. One had to know that most of the aristocratic families' heads in the imperial city were standing here. If Rongjiu brought the soldiers in without any obstructions, it meant that someone had instructed him to do so. What responded to him was even scarier silence. It's you? Or you? Or all of you? Emperor Zhou didn't expect the situation to change so drastically. No wonder Rongjiu was so presumptuous. It turned out that he was fully prepared. So many people secretly betrayed him, but he didn't know it all. Who exactly is it? Emperor Zhou suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Your Majesty, calm down first. I guarantee with my life that the Xi family didn't betray you. Yi stepped forward and said solemnly. Previously, when Rongjio escaped from the execution ground, he couldn't find him for a long time. When he heard that Rongjio had successfully reached the city gates, he returned to the palace to ask for forgiveness. He didn't expect things to become like this in such a short time. Your Majesty, the same goes for the Chu family. Chu Shao hurriedly said to express his loyalty. Ever since he was harshly scolded in the imperial study, Chu Shao never came again. Today he finally had the chance, so he naturally had to suck up to the emperor. Then a few people spoke up one after another. However, the Gu family and the Lu family of the four major families didn't say anything. Emperor Zhou was so angry that his entire body trembled. Did the remaining people who didn't say anything already submit to that bastard? Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded from outside the hall. Imperial Father, haven't you already seen the situation clearly? Why bother to get to the bottom of this? It would only make his face even uglier. Emperor Zhou suddenly looked up and saw a team of soldiers rapidly approaching the palace. Then they separated into two sides. A murderous figure walked out from within. It was Rongjio. Not long ago he was still dressed in prison clothes, battered and exhausted, waiting for the guillotine to fall. But now he was clad in armor, leading his soldiers in an aggressive manner. Finally he stood outside the main hall. He looked at Emperor Zhou fixedly. Imperial Father, how have you been? Fear finally surfaced in Emperor Zhou's heart. Men, protect the emperor. Chu Shao immediately led the others and rushed forward. But before she could stabilize herself, she heard Rongjio lightly say, "Don't worry. I do not wish to implicate the innocent. As long as you surrender now, I guarantee that I will not touch your family members." Chu Shao immediately shouted loudly, "Let's go. This is treason. It was a serious crime. His Majesty is the only emperor. Rongjio, you're only digging your own grave by doing this." "Oh? Really?" Rongjio raised the padao in his hands and slowly wiped away the bloodstain on it. "First Elder Chu, you probably don't know that the entire imperial city is under I's control, right?" Chu Zhao's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Rongjio and felt uneasy. Could it be that Rongjio will really win this time? At the side, Yi coldly said, "Rongjio. Rongjio, you killed the empress and want to rebel now. You deserve to be killed." As he spoke, his body's force surged and he planned to take action. Rongjio chuckled. "I do hate the empress, but the one who killed her is someone else." Yi was dazed. "You're lying." His Majesty said it himself, and he had also investigated in private. The guards outside the empress's palace that day all pointed to Rongjio killing the empress. How could someone else do it? "I have already brought the soldiers here. What's there to lie about?" Rongjio looked at Yi sarcastically. "You should ask father about the truth of the matter." Yi was dazed. Rongjio does make sense. He even started a rebellion, so why wouldn't he admit to killing the empress? Unless he really didn't do it. Yi stiffened his neck and turned to look at Emperor Zhou. Emperor Zhou harshly said, "Elder Yi. Where's Elder Yi?" Such a big thing happened in the palace, but Elder Yi still hasn't appeared. At this point, Emperor Zhou didn't know that Elder Yi, who had been guarding Elder Zhou Yi, had also met with some trouble. Seeing that there was no hope of saving Elder Yi, Emperor Zhou thought of something. Deep Xian Formation. The Deep Xian Formation was Country Yao Chen's palace's defense formation, but he just remembered that the Deep Xian Formation wasn't activated when Rongjio and the rest barged in. Rongjio said, "Oh right. Well that's right. I forgot to tell you that the Deep Xian Formation is also under my control. If you want to take a look, I'll personally send you there. How about that?" Emperor Zhou felt like he had fallen into an ice hole. Then he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Chu Shao, who was standing at the side, had a few drops of blood on him. He wanted to reach out to help him up, but when he thought of what Rongjio said previously, he suddenly felt afraid and took a step back. How could the others not understand at this point? They naturally avoided him. Emperor Zhou's hands trembled as he pointed at Rongjio. "Why?" Rongjio lifted his chin and his expression was cold. "It seems like father's body isn't too good. You should rest properly." As he spoke, he raised his hand. "Someone come and send father to Qinghe Palace to rest." Emperor Zhou immediately shouted. "How dare you? Rongjio clearly wants to imprison me." He clenched his teeth. Rongjiu, don't think that I can't do anything to you. Before he could finish his sentence, a huge commotion came from outside. A cold and gloomy aura quickly spread out. Emperor Zhaoan suddenly looked up. In that direction, is where Xianxia is being locked up. The most important thing is that this aura, someone touched the bronze cauldron. He didn't even think about it and immediately rushed outside. But before he could take 2 steps, he was stopped by someone. Emperor Zhaoan's face flushed red. Let me go over. Rongjiu, do you know what that is? Let me go over immediately. If not, you'll definitely regret it. The moment he finished his sentence, Hong, a greenish-red pillar of light shot up to the sky. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 447. Dark clouds rumbled and heaven and earth darkened. That light pillar went straight for the sky and into the clouds. From afar it looked like it connected heaven and earth. On top of it, the green and red lights intertwined, forming a strange pattern that made one fearful. Rongjiu turned around to take a look and he looked serious. Wei Lin, immediately send someone to check. What exactly is going on? Yes. Everyone in the hall also looked over with different expressions. Taking advantage of this short gap, Emperor Zhaoan suddenly turned around and rushed back. I must be quick. But Rongjiu quickly detected this movement and turned around to look coldly. What are you all waiting for? The people at the side immediately reacted and rushed forward to stop Emperor Zhaoan again. This time, Emperor Zhaoan's hands were tied up and he couldn't move. Rongjiu. Emperor Zhaoan was furious and his face flushed red. Rongjiu waved his hands. Aren't you going to send father to rest? A few soldiers immediately walked over and escorted Emperor Zhaoan away. Eunuch Min and a few other servants who served him were also taken away. At the start, Emperor Zhaoan was still scolding Rongjiu. But when his figure disappeared through the side door, his voice suddenly disappeared, leaving only faint sounds of struggling as if his mouth was stuffed. The crowd looked at one another. At this point it was clear who had won and who had lost. Emperor Zhaoan, who was high and mighty a moment ago, was locked up in the blink of an eye. Even though Rongjiu didn't directly kill him, Emperor Zhaoan's future days wouldn't be good. The entire palace was so quiet that it was suffocating. Rongjiu's gaze swept across the crowd and stopped on Ziyi for a moment. Ziyi's entire body tensed up. Even though the Xi family was the head of the 4 major families, it clearly wasn't a wise move to go against the current Rongjiu. Xi family head, I'll have to trouble you to accompany father during this period of time. Ziyi's heart sank. Is Rongjiu planning to put me under house arrest? Third prince. Before Ziyi could finish his sentence, Rongjiu nonchalantly interrupted him and slowly said, You're not the only one. Don't worry, as long as you take good care of father, I will naturally take good care of everyone in the Xi family. This was a blatant threat. Ziyi's heart surged with anger, but he suppressed it in the end and said word by word, Since that's the case, I'll have to trouble your highness. Then he turned around and walked in the direction that Emperor Zhaoan left in. Several officers and soldiers followed closely behind. Everyone exchanged glances privately. Seems like Rongjiu still has a grudge against the empress. Besides, Ziyi was the one who sent Rongjiu to the execution ground. The Xi family's situation naturally wouldn't be any better. Seeing that Emperor Zhaoan and Ziyi had already been dealt with, Chu Shao was filled with regret. If he had known earlier, he definitely wouldn't have stood out. Now Rongjiu will definitely remember this in his heart. As expected, Rongjiu's gaze landed on him. Great Elder Chu. Chu Shao shuddered as he looked at Rongjiu fearfully. Third Highness, you're very loyal to father. Why, aren't you going together? Chu Zhao's legs turned to jelly and he immediately said, Your Highness, you're mistaken. Especially just now. Rongjiu's gaze was filled with unconcealed mockery. Chu Zhao's heart skipped a beat and he seemed to be choking on something. His face flushed red and white and he wanted to defend himself again. However, under such a mocking gaze he seemed to be a joke. Great Elder Chu, please. The soldier at the side had already spoken first. Sensing their terrifying murderous intent, Chu Shao clenched and loosened his fists. In the end he could only leave with them. Then the other people who previously stood on Emperor Zhouan's side were brought away. After a short silence, someone mustered his courage and spoke. Congratulations, Hong Long. Before he could say anything to curry favor, another loud sound came from the sky. Rongjiu took a deep breath in, turned around and looked over. Wei Lin had already returned. Rongjiu asked, "Where did that light pillar come from?" Wei Lin's expression was very solemn. "Your Highness, it seems to have come from Taiyuan Palace." Rongjiu knitted his brows. "Hasn't nobody been living there since a long time ago? Have you found out who caused such a commotion there?" Wei Lin paused before saying, "Your Highness. Your Highness, I'm useless. The outside of Taiyuan Palace is covered by a barrier. Outsiders can't get close to it and they can't see the situation inside. I tried to enter 3 times but I didn't succeed." Rongjiu was slightly shocked. Wei Lin is a stage 5 warrior and he's very capable. If even he can't break the barrier, bring I there. When the light pillar shot up to the sky, Elder Yi and Elder Zhong Yi, who were in a stalemate, also felt the strong ripple in another hidden dungeon in the palace. Upon hearing the loud sound, the two of them were stunned. There aren't many people in the entire country Yaochen who can cause such a commotion. Also, it sounds like it's not far from the palace. The two of them held their breaths and focused as they felt the sinister ripple. Suddenly, Elder Yi was shocked. The commotion seems to be coming from where Xianxia is locked up. Most importantly, this aura. Elder Yi had a terrifying and absurd conjecture in his heart. Then he turned around and quickly left. Elder Zhong Yi was stunned. Yi Zhiding actually left just like that? What exactly is so urgent that he actually gave up on guarding me? Thinking of this, Elder Zhong Yi quickly broke free from the cage and followed him. The moment Elder Yi came out, he was stunned by the huge light pillar that connected heaven and earth. He froze on the spot and didn't recover his senses for a long time. Indeed. Someone still touched the bronze cauldron. Elder Zhong Yi, who quickly rushed out, was also shocked when he saw this scene. However, he was more confused. Yi Zhiding is considered someone who has seen many big scenes. What exactly is it that can make him reveal such an expression? However, this question didn't linger in his heart for long. To him, the most important thing now was to find Xianxia and bring her away. Even though the bracelet was destroyed, he was very familiar with Xianxia's aura. As long as she was still in the palace, he could still find her quickly. Thinking of this, Elder Zhong Yi closed his eyes and searched carefully. After a moment, he opened his eyes and deep shock flashed across his eyes. Xianxia seems to be at the spot where the light pillar came from. On the other end, Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi also entered the palace amidst the chaos when Rongjiu led the soldiers into the palace. Luckily, everyone's attention was on Rongjiu and the rest. In addition, the duo was good at hiding their figures, so their journey was smooth. Until they saw the terrifying light pillar. Jian Fengqi knitted his brows. "What's that? It's so eerie." Chu Luiyue didn't have any expression on his face. "I'm still a step too late." "What?" Jian Fengqi was about to ask again when a figure suddenly rushed out of the light pillar. "Digression. Trash computer ruining my time and slowing me down. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 448. Under the light, that person's figure was a little blurry, but Chu Luiyue still recognized her. That person was Xianxia. When she flew to the middle of the light pillar, she finally stopped. Then the surrounding heaven and earth force crazily surged into her body. A few energy whirlpools rapidly appeared around her. Even the pattern on the pillar of light seemed to distort. Chu Luiyue stared at Xianxia's figure closely. As the energy surged in, her aura kept strengthening. What's going on?" Jian Fengqi muttered and nudged Chu Luiyue with his elbow. "Hey, do you know what she's doing? You were referring to this when you said you were one step too late?" Chu Luiyue didn't say anything, but many thoughts surfaced in his mind. That bronze cauldron must be with Xianxia. And it's obvious that she's already activated it. She used the energy inside. She was just a stage 3 warrior previously, but not long after she's about to break through to stage 4. I have to think of a way to stop her. Jian Fengqi stared at it a few more times and knitted his brows. "This thing is a little strange. Don't you sense a bloody smell?" Chu Luiyue coldly said, The bronze cauldron contains the blood of the bronze cauldron. The bronze cauldron contains the power and blood essence of several hundred cultivators. It's not strange for it to smell like this. Jian Fengqi's expression changed. He was a celestial physician and had killed and saved countless people. But when he heard Chu Liuyue's words, he still felt disgusted. As long as he used his brain to think, he would know what kind of scene it would be. It turns out that the bronze cauldron is such an evil item. In that case, the energy in this light pillar was actually snatched from those people. But the energy accumulated through such means is mottled and messy, and it might even conflict with each other. Once one absorbs this energy, even though it can raise one's cultivation level in the short term, it will greatly affect one's future cultivation. Who's so brainless to do such a thing? He naturally didn't recognize Situ Xingqian. Chu Luyue pursed her lips tightly. How could Situ Xingqian not know what Jian Fengqi said? But she still chose to do it. Suddenly, Chu Luyue sensed a strange fluctuation coming from the Qiankuan bag. She carefully examined it and discovered that the commotion actually came from a wooden box. That wooden box happened to be the one I got from Situ Xingqian. Chu Luyue looked up again and frowned. The movement of the wooden box seemed to have been caused by the light pillar. Inside the wooden box was a roll of parchment. There was a layer of seal on it, and even now she had not been able to break it. Previously she had thought of many ways to open it, but none of them succeeded, so she put it aside for the time being. Who would have thought that it was related to the bronze cauldron? In midair, Situ Xingqian was still rapidly absorbing the surrounding energy, and her aura was clearly becoming stronger. Following this change, Chu Liwei clearly felt that the movement in the wooden box was gradually expanding. Jian Fengqi then realized that Chu Liyue's expression was amiss. "What's wrong with you?" Chu Liyue shook her head. From what Emperor Zhou said previously, she could guess that the Empress specially prepared the bronze cauldron for Rongjin to help him improve his cultivation level. She vaguely guessed that Emperor Zhou knew something, but she didn't say it. She originally planned to carefully check the item after finding it, but she was one step too late as Situ Xingqian beat her to it. Once it's opened, the energy in the bronze cauldron will definitely be absorbed and turned into Situ Xingqian's energy. But now it seems like things are more troublesome than expected. What are you looking at? Hurry up and leave. Suddenly, an impatient scolding came from the side. Chu Liyue quickly turned around and saw a group of people walking over. Her figure moved and she quickly hid in the corner at the side. Upon seeing this, Jian Fengqi also hid. The group of people walked closer and closer. Chu Liyue then clearly saw that the person being scolded in the middle was actually Emperor Zhou. Behind him were Eunuch Min and the others, and they all seemed to have suffered. He was surrounded by soldiers in red armor. They were Rongjio's men. Emperor Zhou had already changed out of his dragon robe, and he looked a little disheveled. If one didn't look closely, one wouldn't be able to recognize him. He looked anxious as he kept turning his head to look at the green and red light pillars as if he wanted to say something. It was a pity that his mouth was sealed, so he could only make muffled sounds. He couldn't hear anything clearly. The soldiers at the side pushed and shoved him, rushing him forward. Emperor Zhou kept struggling, until the person at the side pulled out a sword, pressed it against his waist and hollered, "We have plenty of ways to make you obedient. Why don't you try?" Emperor Zhou finally stopped, and despair flashed across his eyes as he stumbled forward with them. Very quickly, these people walked past Chu Liyue and Jian Fengqi and headed in a certain direction. Chu Liyue's eyes sparkled and she planned to follow them. Jian Fengqi pulled her back. "Where are you going?" Chu Liyue glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. "If you want to follow me, go ahead. If you don't want to, you can walk on your own." Jian Fengqi was stumped. Wasn't this girl always polite to him before? Why did she suddenly have such an attitude? He was about to retort when he met her clear eyes. He suddenly felt guilty and softly muttered, "Go ahead. So be it. Why are you so angry? Why is Chu Liyue's temper so bad? My status is clearly much higher than hers, but why do I feel like I'm lower than her?" Just as he was wondering if the problem was with him, Chu Liyue had already left with those people. Jian Fengqi could only follow. Those people brought Emperor Zhou to Qinghe Hall. Emperor Zhou was locked in a room alone, and the others were locked at the side. The doors and windows were tightly locked and there were people guarding every corner. Luckily there weren't many people. Actually, Rongjie was still wary of Emperor Zhou, but the entire imperial city was under his control now. After enduring for so many years, he finally succeeded and he was in a good mood, so he naturally let down his guard. In addition, Xianxia's commotion distracted part of his attention. This made things convenient for Chu Liyue. After observing for a while, she sent Dumpling out. Dumpling was small and fast, so she quickly caused a commotion and attracted the attention of two guards. Taking advantage of the time when they left to check, Chu Liyue quickly entered the hall. Hong! Another thunderous sound was heard. Chu Liyue turned around and saw that Xianxia had actually become a stage 4 warrior. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 449. However, Xianxia didn't stop there. Instead, she started to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force at an even faster speed. It was obvious that the greenish-red pillar of light contributed greatly. Chu Liyue knitted her brows as she looked at the rumbling dark clouds in the sky and the lightning that flashed from time to time. Generally speaking, such a phenomenon would only appear when a rare treasure appeared in the world. For a cultivator to cause such a huge commotion, they had to at least break through to become a stage 5 warrior. One had to know that when Chu Ning recovered from his old injuries and broke through to become a stage 5 warrior, it wasn't like this at all. If this continued, Xianxia would most likely continue to break through. The wooden box in the cosmic bag was also vibrating more and more. Chu Liyue almost couldn't ignore it anymore. She even felt that there was something in the wooden box that wanted to rush out. At this point, Emperor Zhou heard the commotion and suddenly turned his head. Chu Liyue immediately hid behind the study table. At this point, Emperor Zhou was distracted, and his remaining rationality and attention were all placed on the pillar of light outside. He didn't even notice Chu Liyue. He slowly walked to the window, which was locked from the outside and couldn't be opened. Hence, he couldn't see the situation outside. He could only see the light reflected on the window. How can this be? How can this be? Emperor Zhou was dazed as he softly muttered. Rua, I've let you down in the end. Chu Liyue was dazed. Rua? Isn't this Consort 1 back then, Rongjie's birth mother? What does Emperor Zhou mean by saying this at this time? Also, it sounds like there's deep regret and self-blame in his voice. Rumor has it that Emperor Zhou only doted on Consort 1 back then, and the harem of 3,000 people couldn't compare to her. However, not long after Consort 1 gave birth to Rongjie, she had a huge fight with Emperor Zhou. She then directly moved out of the palace and went to Tianlu Academy. After staying in the academy for 2 years, she passed away. It's normal that Emperor Zhou can't forget her, but why did he mention her at this time? At this moment, Emperor Zhou removed something from his neck. Because he was facing Chu Liyue from his side, Chu Liyue could only see a rough outline, but could not see clearly what it was. You're still blaming me? Is it because I was wrong that I ended up like this? Emperor Zhou muttered softly as he looked at the item in his hands. He seemed to be smiling and crying at the same time. Shortly after, the item in his hand suddenly glowed with a faint light. Like a stream of water, it flowed along Emperor Zhou's arm and spread to his entire body. Very quickly, Emperor Zhou's entire body was enveloped in that strange light. Chu Liyue's pupils shrank. This was because Emperor Zhou's aura was gradually becoming stronger. However, that power was clearly gushing out from his own body. A strange pattern suddenly appeared above his head. Chu Liyue took a quick look and realized that the pattern was exactly the same as the pattern on the green-red light pillar outside. But in comparison, the one above Emperor Zhou's head looked much more normal, unlike the one outside that was filled with a strange and eerie aura. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the pattern. Following the crack, Emperor Zhou's aura became even stronger. Chu Liyue finally realized something. There's a seal in Emperor Zhou's body. Now he seems to be planning to break that seal. It's obvious that Emperor Zhou's abilities aren't as ordinary as they seem on the surface. Chu Liyue suddenly thought of something and his heart harshly skipped a beat. If the pattern that appeared above Emperor Zhou's head was a seal, what about the one outside? Hong Long. A snake-like bolt of lightning shuttled through the thick black clouds and finally struck the light pillar. Crackle. Following this ear-piercing sound, a crack appeared in the middle of the strange pattern on the pillar of light. But as the light pillar kept flashing and the pattern was pulled until it almost changed shape, almost nobody noticed this change. Most people's attention was on Situ Xingqian, who was in the middle of the light pillar. Rongjiu stared at her closely. Actually, he had already recognized that person as Situ Xingqian. It seems like she has been locked up in the palace previously, but for some reason she suddenly started to break through. The aura on the light pillar is the same as the bronze cauldron. Your Highness, what should we do? The crowd behind him exchanged glances. Should we just let it go like this? But it seems like we can't go near to stop it. Rongjiu boomed, seal the gates. Be prepared to activate the Deep Xian formation at any time. Everyone was shocked. Your Highness, activating the Deep Xian formation requires a lot of manpower and resources. It seems a little overboard to deal with a stage 4 warrior. One of the patriarchs asked tentatively. Rongjiu turned around and sneered. It seems like family head Su is willing to take the lead? That person's expression changed and he hurriedly shook his head. What a joke. The aura on the light pillar is so dangerous. Even a stage 5 warrior like Wei Lin can't do anything about it, let alone the others. Since no one wants to go, immediately go down and prepare the Deep Xian formation. Rongjiu hollered and that person was shocked. He didn't dare to say anything else and hurriedly left. Very quickly the people at the side also followed him. Rongjiu looked at Situ Xingqian again and suddenly thought of something. Where's Elder Yi now? At this point, Elder Yi was fighting with Elder Zhongyi again. After coming out he planned to stop Situ Xingqian, but Elder Zhongyi blocked his way. The two of them were equally skilled. Without a burden, Elder Zhongyi's combat ability was much stronger than before. Hence after a few moves the two of them were still tied. Seeing that Situ Xingqian had already broken through and was planning to continue, Elder Yi became increasingly anxious. Zhongyi, do you know what your precious niece is doing? Elder Zhongyi sneered. Isn't it very clear what she's doing? If you want to stop this great opportunity, you'll have to get past me first. That light pillar contained immense strength, and Situ Xingqian had already successfully broken through from a stage 3 warrior to a stage 4 warrior. Not long later she might even break through to a stage 5 warrior. Situ Xingqian was very talented as a celestial physician, but her progress as a warrior was mediocre. As long as she grasped this opportunity well, she would definitely be 100 times stronger than before. Elder Yi was enraged. This idiot actually thought that Situ Xingqian was lucky enough to obtain this opportunity. He even hoped that she would continue to break through and become a top warrior. He really can't be saved. Since that's the case, I won't stop her. Just wait here and see if she'll become a top warrior in the end. Digression. There are 2 more updates at night. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 450. Elder Zhongyi's heart was beating like a drum. He was a rank 6 warrior and could naturally feel that something was wrong with the aura in the light pillar. Seeing Elder Yi in such a state, he became even more worried. However, since he had already said so earlier, it was naturally inappropriate for him to go back on his word. Thinking that Situ Xingqian always knew her limits, he felt more at ease and tried to defend himself. Outsiders like you don't need to worry about this. After saying that, he looked at the pillar of light. At this point, Situ Xingqian's aura had already broken through to the intermediate stage 4 stage. And it was still growing stronger. Elder Zhongyi was half excited and half worried. However, he didn't notice that Elder Ye's eyes flashed with shock when he saw a crack appear on the pattern on the pillar of light. Situ Xingqian's breakthrough speed was faster than he expected. The power within the bronze cauldron was still gushing out. If this continued, things would only get more and more out of hand. Oh right, an Emperor Zhouan. Thinking of this, old man Yi turned to leave. Elder Zhongyi's eyes were sharp and his hands were nimble. He once again stood in front of him and asked with extreme vigilance, "Where are you going?" Elder Ye's eyes darkened. "Zhongyi, I've already said that I won't stop Situ Xingqian. You better get out of the way now." However, Elder Zhongyi did not believe him at all. Who knew what tricks Yi Zhiding would come up with to deal with him and Xingqian? No matter what, you have to stay here. You can't go anywhere until it's over. Elder Zhongyi sneered. The two of us are evenly matched. Even if I can't take you down, it won't be that easy for you to leave either. Elder Yi was so angry that he almost cursed. He wanted to smash open Zhou Ye's brain to see if it was filled with water. Zhou Yi, don't push your luck. Elder Zhou Yi shrugged. It was clear that he wanted to fight him to the end. Unlike the chaotic palace, the Prince Li's mansion was completely quiet at this moment. Rong Xiu stood in the courtyard, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed in the direction of the palace. He raised his eyebrows when he saw the pattern on it start to crack. Umo, who was standing behind him, couldn't help but ask. Master, it seems like Xianxia's ambition is greater than expected. She actually used such a short time to break through to this stage. His limbs were crippled, his origin power sealed, and all the humiliation he's suffered in the past few days. Anyone would have done the same. Not to mention her? Rong Xiu smiled faintly. Umo thought the same. Xianxia isn't a kind person. Judging from the recent events, this woman is clearly the kind of person who will do anything to achieve her goals. Not to mention that she didn't know the other secret hidden in the bronze cauldron. Even if she knew, she might still try her luck. Third brother, what's your plan? Rong Xiu asked calmly. Umo immediately said, Third Highness, prepare to activate the dark mysterious formation. But for some reason there was no movement at all. Third Imperial brother, when you are on the battlefield, you have always been particular about knowing the enemy and yourself, and you will never be defeated. Now he probably doesn't know what Xianxia wants to do, so he's planning to wait and see. Naturally he won't act rashly. Besides, he had just taken over the imperial city and was only one step away from the throne. He would naturally be very careful. A smile flashed across Rong Xiu's eyes. Actually, Rong Xiu is very outstanding in all aspects. There's nothing wrong with this idea. However, he didn't know that time wouldn't wait for anyone. If he wanted to wait until he was fully prepared before taking action, it might already be too late. Master, are you not planning to interfere? Asked Umo curiously. Rong Xiu squinted his eyes. Why do I have to do something unnecessary? This way it would save him a lot of trouble. Umo respectfully answered. A ripple suddenly appeared in the air. Umo turned around and saw Yanqing, whom he hadn't seen in a long time, walking out. He looked like he had rushed back and was covered in dust. Greetings, Master. Yanqing knelt on one knee and presented a letter with both hands. Rong Xiu looked at the letter calmly. Master, that side can't hold on for much longer. 36 Respected Elder Feng personally wrote a letter to ask you to go back as soon as possible. Hearing 36 Respected Elder Feng, Umo's eyelids twitched. That person actually came out personally? It can be seen that the situation over there isn't optimistic. Actually, thinking about it carefully, Master hasn't gone back in such a long time. Rong Xiu picked up the letter. The moment it touched his fingertips, the letter instantly turned into a ray of light. It flew in front of Rong Xiu. Then the ray of light turned into a circular light screen. A blurry silhouette appeared on top of it. Your Highness, are you really not planning to come back? A low and gentle voice came from within. It was like a gentle breeze that made one feel as if they were bathed in the spring breeze. Umo suddenly shivered as he exchanged glances with Yanqing. They both saw the fear in each other's eyes. This person actually used such a voice to speak. It's over. Rong Xiu's eyes narrowed slightly, but the corners of his lips still held a light smile. Respected Elder, you've misunderstood. I will go back in a few days. That's good. The voice was still gentle and even had a hint of a smile. It's good. Your Highness hasn't returned for a long time. Everyone thought that you died outside. Rong Xiu's eyelids twitched violently. Digression. There's another update later. Go to bed early. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 451. Umo and Yanqing both held their breaths and didn't dare to make a sound. If they could, they really wanted to disappear from here right now. There weren't many people in the world who dared to be so rude to His Highness, and this person was one of them. However, he had never said such words in the past. It could be seen that he was furious this time. Rong Xiu coughed. Respected Elder, you're joking. It's good that your Highness knows. That voice sounded a little fierce, but Yanqing and Umo both heaved a sigh of relief. In this case they could at least muddle through, right? I heard that your highness stayed there for so long this time because of a woman? Rong Xiu's brows moved slightly and he glanced at Yanqing from the corner of his eyes. Yanqing opened her mouth. It wasn't Yanqing who said it. That elder sneered. It's just this old man's guess. However, it seems that I guessed it right. Rong Xiu paused for a moment and nodded lightly. That's right. 36 respected elder Ming was caught off guard by his frank admission. Your highness has never been close to women. Why did you suddenly become enlightened after going out? The anger from before disappeared and was replaced by curiosity and ridicule. I wonder what kind of woman can make your highness like this. It seems that those old fellows still don't know about this? Rong Xiu said honestly. Yes. I haven't returned yet, so it's not appropriate to make it public now. When I return, I will naturally mention this matter personally. These words made the elder in the light screen silent for a while. Your highness intends to give her a status? Rong Xiu smiled. She's Ai's wife. Naturally she has to have a status. What? That elder was shocked and lost his voice. Even the originally blurry figure trembled. Your highness intends to, but she probably hasn't even entered heaven's canopy before, right? How could those old fellows agree to a woman with such a background? Rong Xiu's smile deepened. Didn't you agree just like that? This old man is. How can that group of people be compared to this old man? The old man said angrily. Is your highness looking down on this old man? Since that woman was chosen by your highness, this old man naturally trusts her. Moreover, the person who could make his highness put in so much effort must be someone that his highness had in mind. Why would this old man object? No wonder his highness took so long to come back. However, since you were prepared, why did you take so long? At the end of his sentence, the old man's tone was filled with disdain. Rong Xiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't worry, I know what to do. I'll be back in a few days. If anything happens over there, please take care of it for the time being. The old man smacked his lips twice. This old man has always been impatient with such things. This time, for the sake of his highness's marriage, I'll just agree. However, when his highness returns, this old man wants to be the first to see that woman. A glimmer flashed across Rong Xiu's deep eyes. I'm afraid you'll have to wait for a while. This time she won't be returning with I. What? She won't be coming back with you. The old man was shocked. He was already thinking of what gift to give her. Why did he say that she wouldn't be coming? Wait. Don't tell me she hasn't taken a liking to you. Rong Xiu, Yanqing and Umo both shrunk their necks and wished they could find a hole to hide in. They really didn't want to hear this conversation at all. Rong Xiu took a deep breath. You don't have to worry about this. She'll be returning to heaven's canopy soon and has some matters to attend to. When she's done, you'll naturally have a chance to see her. The old man's interest was immediately piqued. She came to heaven's canopy but didn't come with you? Then where did she go? What did she do? Rong Xiu refused to say more. You'll know all this when it's time. Seeing that Rong Xiu wasn't willing to reveal anything, the old man didn't continue asking. Since this is the case, I hope you'll return soon. After saying that, the light screen quickly dissipated. Rong Xiu lightly sighed. This time it had indeed dragged on for too long. Even 36 respected elder Ming personally wrote a letter. He thought for a moment and asked, What's the matter? What's Mu Qinghe up to today? Umo immediately said, Earlier he went to Ms. Lu Yu's place and left. Rong Xiu's expression turned serious. At this time Mu Qinghe went to find her. Where's he now? Umo was dazed and his expression suddenly changed. According to the previous rules, the people sent to monitor Mu Qinghe had to report to him every once in a while. However, there didn't seem to be any news today. I've been by Rong Xiu's side and only cared about Rong Jiu's matters, so I actually forgot about this. Umo knelt down with a thud. I've neglected my duty. Master, please punish me. Rong Xiu had long realized something when he saw Umo's expression. He knitted his brows. No need. Seems like he left today. Mu Qinghe isn't a simple person. It's impossible for him not to know that someone is secretly monitoring him. There must be a reason why he took action today. Where's Yu? Asked Rong Xiu immediately. Umo's heart skipped a beat. Rong Xiu closed his eyes. After a moment he opened them and looked in a certain direction. That's where the palace is. She actually entered the palace. He looked at the light pillar that connected the heavens and the earth. As time passed, the light pillar's color seemed to have faded a lot. However, Xianxia's aura was much stronger than before. The most important thing was that many cracks had already appeared on the strange pattern on the light pillar. Xiao's eyes darkened. The next moment, another bolt of lightning struck down. That pattern was finally completely torn apart. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 452. Xiao's figure moved and he rapidly disappeared from the yard. Umo and Yanqing looked at each other and followed him. As the strange pattern cracked, Xianxia officially broke through and became a stage 5 warrior. Seeing that the light pillar didn't show any signs of disappearing and that Xianxia, who was suspended in it, was still absorbing the surrounding heaven and earth force, Xiao finally realized that something was amiss. If this continues, who knows if Xianxia will continue to break through. He looked at Wei Lin. Have you found Elder Yi? Wei Lin shook his head. Xiao pondered for a moment. Give the order to activate the Deep Xian formation. Upon hearing this, the crowd standing at the back looked at each other. Nobody expected Xiao to use the Deep Xian formation, which Emperor Jiawen didn't have the time to activate, to deal with Xianxia. Yes. Wei Lin quickly left with the others. The waiting time was always very unbearable. After around 15 minutes, a ripple finally came from the northwest corner of the palace. A star gradually appeared in midair. Following that, more and more dots of light appeared around the starlight. In the blink of an eye, they connected together. It was like a small galaxy. Almost at the same time, the same scene was happening in the other 3 directions. All the light spots gathered in the middle. It was as if there was an invisible hand connecting the 4 pieces of starlight together. Hong. When everything gathered together, it finally made a loud sound. It was like a gigantic star net that covered the entire palace. A vast suppression descended. The greenish-red light pillar was also suppressed by this force and started to shrink toward the center. At this point, Xianxia suddenly opened her eyes. That pair of eyes that were always filled with water, were now filled with a scarlet red. Brutal and cold murderous intent crazily surged out from the depths of her eyes. She looked at her wrists and ankles. With the help of that force, all her physical injuries had healed, and her cultivation level had also directly broken through from a stage 3 warrior to a stage 5 warrior. She slowly clenched her fists and felt the abundant strength in her body. She was elated. Previously she was still a little hesitant, but it now seemed like her decision was right. Not to mention country Yaochen, even in the entire world, how many people could break through to this level in such a short period of time? Most importantly, the energy in the bronze cauldron had not been completely exhausted. In other words, her strength would continue to rise. She raised her head and saw that the pillar of light seemed to be gradually shrinking. She smiled coldly. Then she clasped her hands together and the force around her surged wildly. In an instant the wind howled. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The pillar of light that entered the clouds suddenly fell down like a waterfall. Those dazzling rays of light, along with an incomparably valiant power, madly surged into her body. Intense pain came from every part of his body. Xianxia saw a few small wounds on her hand bursting open and sticky, sweet blood slowly seeped out. However, she gritted her teeth and did not stop. Only in this way would he be able to break through faster. As long as she could endure this pain, she would become a top expert in the world. Very quickly, Xiao and the rest saw the light pillar, which seemed to connect heaven and earth, rapidly decrease in size. Xianxia's body was like a black hole as it crazily swallowed the light. The uneasiness in Xiao's heart intensified. He hollered, "Deep Xian formation, activate." His low and powerful voice reverberated far and wide. Instantly, all the cultivators in the palace exerted their strength. Rays of light intersected on the gigantic Deep Xian formation. Very quickly they outlined a gigantic figure. A dragon's roar reverberated between heaven and earth. It was actually a 7th-grade fiend, red-tailed flood dragon. Its entire body was silver, and only its tail was red like a burning flame. Its body was huge and it almost covered the entire sky. When the dragon's roar sounded, even the ground seemed to move. The Deep Xian Formation was a protective formation around the palace, but very few people knew that this Xian Formation was actually suppressing a red-tailed flood dragon. And it was the most formidable part of the Deep Xian Formation. Even though the red-tailed flood dragon was a 7th-grade fiend, it had the bloodline of an ancient legendary fiend, the Great Phoenix Dragon. The red-tailed flood dragon could be considered the strongest existence among the 7th-grade fiends. Rumors had it that some red-tailed flood dragons had the chance to break through to 8th grade or even higher. The red-tailed flood dragon hovered in midair, and its gigantic red eyes were icy cold. It was indifferent. Xianxia's heart skipped a beat. I didn't expect a fiend of such a grade to be hidden under the Deep Xian Formation. Even though I'm already a stage 5 warrior, it's still a little wishful thinking for me to deal with a 7th grade fiend. Unless I can break through to the peak of a stage 6 warrior, I'll only have a sliver of hope. Xianxia clenched her teeth, circulated her energy and rapidly set up a barrier around her. The next moment, the red-tailed flood dragon rapidly charged toward Xianxia. Wherever it passed, black cracks appeared in the air. This showed how strong the suppression around it was. Then the dragon's tail harshly swung out. It heavily hit the barrier in front of Xianxia. Boom! A loud collision sound was heard. A suppressive force directly passed through the barrier and crushed Xianxia's body. Her body trembled and her face instantly turned much paler. But the next moment, elation flashed across her eyes. That's because the barrier didn't break. With my current stage 5 warrior strength, the barrier I set up definitely won't be able to block the red-tailed flood dragon's attack. Hence, I directly used the light pillar's energy to form this barrier. It's indeed very strong. Xianxia was slightly relieved and continued to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force. As long as I have a little more time, I might be the red-tailed flood dragon's opponent. Seeing that Xianxia actually withstood the red-tailed flood dragon's attack, the spectators below were shocked. What's with the greenish-red glow on her body? It actually contains such a strong force. In such a short time she already broke through to become a stage 5 warrior. No. She's actually already an intermediate stage 5 warrior. Is she going to break through to become a stage 6 warrior? Did you see that? She seems to be bleeding. Her physical body probably can't take it anymore. What exactly is she planning to do? Not only in the palace, but everyone in the entire imperial city had already seen the commotion. They all looked up at the scene. Xianxia ignored all the gazes. Something seemed to be moving in her chest and blood kept seeping out of her body. However, she couldn't feel any pain and only felt that she was surrounded by a ball of fire. Suddenly, her gaze focused and she looked somewhere. She waved her sleeves. A powerful wave of energy swept out. Chu Liyue, who was hiding in Qinghe Hall, felt the commotion behind him and alarms went off in his heart. He turned around. A vast suppression came toward him. Digression, I slept at 5 p.m. Woo 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 woo. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 453. A strong force morphed into a bloody whip and harshly lashed toward her. Chu Liyue immediately backed away. The wooden table that was blocking it instantly shattered. Shards flew everywhere. Half of Qinghe Hall's roof was instantly blown away. However, the bloody whip didn't stop. Instead, it swept toward Chu Liyue at an even faster speed. Emperor Zhou, who was standing on the other side of the room, was also shocked by the commotion and immediately turned around. The two of them looked into each other's eyes. Deep shock flashed across Emperor Zhou's eyes. Chu Liyue paused in her actions. However, during this short pause, the bloody whip had already reached her waist and was tightly coiling around her. Then her body was harshly pulled away by the bloody whip. Emperor Zhou's eyes flashed, and he actually hid in an even more secluded corner that wasn't affected. At the same time, the barrier around his body was strengthened. As long as nobody went near him, nobody would notice his abnormality. Chu Liyue's heart sank. Emperor Zhou's gaze just now was filled with murderous intent. At this moment, the bloody whip around her waist tightened again. Chu Liyue suddenly turned around and realized that the other end of the bloody whip was in Situ Xingqian's hands. Situ Xingqian gently waved her wrist, and Chu Liyue's body uncontrollably flew toward her. Chu Liyue immediately pulled out her dagger. She harshly slashed at the bloody whip. The bloody whip broke with a loud sound. But before Chu Liyue could rejoice, she saw the broken part of the bloody whip quickly reconnect. This blood whip was condensed from that strange power, and the dagger was unable to completely cut it apart. In the blink of an eye, she was only 10 steps away from Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian raised her chin and arrogantly looked at Chu Liyue in front of her. It's indeed you. Now that she had broken through to become an intermediate stage 5 warrior, her perception of her surroundings had increased by several times. Just now she clearly felt a very familiar and disgusting aura, so she decisively attacked. It really was that B*TC. Every time Situ Xingqian saw Chu Liyue's face, hatred would surge in her heart. She would definitely make Chu Liyue pay her back 100-fold for everything she had experienced before. Thinking of this, she waved her wrist without hesitation. The blood whip suddenly loosened and immediately lashed towards Chu Liyue's face. Chu Liyue immediately dodged. However, Situ Xingqian's current cultivation level was much higher than hers, and it was the same for her speed and strength. Even though she had already dodged at full speed, she was still caught in the crossfire. Chu Liyue's left arm was instantly lacerated. Blood flowed like a river. Because of this powerful impact, her body also fell to the ground fiercely. The moment he saw Chu Liyue appear in the air, Yi Lao was shocked and wanted to rush over to help. That girl is still a stage 3 warrior. How can she be Situ Xingqian's match? But as soon as he moved, Elder Zhong Yi blocked his path again. Elder Zhong Yi, who had suffered a lot previously and was very aggrieved, finally vented his anger. Yi Zhiding, didn't you say that your precious disciple is a rare genius? Why are you in such a hurry to help? Why don't we take a good look at the two of them and see who will win? Yi Zhiding finally couldn't hold it in and scolded. Who does that Situ Xingqian think she is? How can she be compared to my disciple? Do you think that the humiliation at the Qing Jiao competition wasn't enough? Zhong Yi, don't be smug too early. Situ Xingqian activated the bronze cauldron on her own accord and swallowed the strength of hundreds of cultivators. Even if she can break through in a short period of time, there will be endless trouble in the future. Zhong Ye's heart skipped a beat. No wonder I felt that Situ Xingqian's aura was a little off. But at such a crucial moment, how can I boost someone else's morale and destroy my own? You don't have to worry about this. You'd better think about whether or not your precious disciple can survive this time. From what I see, Xingqian's move can directly take away half of her life. She's just a stage 3 warrior. Perhaps she can't even last 3 moves against Xingqian. Yi Zhiding's expression was extremely cold as he stared at Elder Zhong Yi with deadly eyes and said word by word, I only have this one disciple in my entire life. If anyone dares to hurt her, I won't rest until I'm dead. As his voice fell, the aura on his body suddenly skyrocketed. Elder Zhong Yi was stunned. Yi Zhiding is actually serious about this. The next moment, Elder Yi had already rushed toward him. The two of them instantly engaged in a fight. Rong Jiu stared at the scene in midair and his expression didn't look too good. Just now, Chu Liyue seemed to have come out of Qinghe Hall. The crowd behind him fell silent. Rong Jiu turned around and walked toward Qinghe Hall with big strides. Previously he had clearly sent quite a few people to escort Emperor Zhaowen to Qinghe Hall, but Chu Liyue was actually there as well. If it weren't for Situ Xingqian's sudden attack, he didn't know when he would find out about this. Just as Chu Liyue's body was about to land heavily on the ground, she suddenly felt a force pulling her from behind. Chu Liyue turned around and realized that it was Dumpling biting the corner of her shirt. He pulled her back. Well, the soft material couldn't withstand such a pull and it suddenly tore apart. Panic flashed across Dumpling's eyes. If I land on her, I'll be seriously injured. The piercing aura was like a steel knife as it quickly scraped across Chu Liyue's body. She focused her gaze and saw that the white marble floor was rapidly approaching. Her heart tingled, and she was about to activate the water droplet strength in her dantian when she saw a white figure flash across her eyes. The next moment she felt herself falling into a ball of softness. Xue Xue. Chu Liyue looked at Xue Xue, who suddenly appeared and saved her, in surprise. Shueishue's four hooves stepped lightly as it carried Chu Luiyue up. Roar. A majestic lion's roar reverberated throughout the area. Everyone was stunned by this sudden scene. In midair, Chu Luiyue, who should have fallen to the ground, was sitting on the back of a muscular snow-white lion. The wind blew and her black hair fluttered like a black flag in the wind. Not only was there not the slightest bit of timidity or fear on that peerlessly beautiful face, it was instead filled with a lofty majesty. Cold, arrogant, determined. At one glance she was incomparably noble, and it made one subconsciously want to submit to her. She and Situ Xianxia were facing each other from afar, but even Situ Xianxia, who had a higher cultivation level, seemed to be shorter. Countless pairs of eyes that saw this scene were all dazed. Is this really Chu Luiyue? Chu Luiyue lowered her gaze and glanced at the wound on her left arm. She then slowly raised her head and stared coldly at Situ Xianxia in front of her. Her lips suddenly curved up into a cold smile. Very good. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 454. Situ Xianxia was taken aback by Chu Luiyue's gaze, and a tinge of fear unknowingly grew in her heart. However, she suddenly woke up in the next moment. Fear. Chu Luiyue is definitely not my match now. The one who should be afraid should be Chu Luiyue. Situ Xianxia suppressed her emotions as her gaze landed on the white lion, and her pupils constricted. That's clearly Rongxiu's fiend. Rongxiu has never summoned it in front of others before, and very few people know about this. I only found out about it once by accident. Now it actually appeared here and even saved Chu Luiyue. Is it trying to help Chu Luiyue to the end? Situ Xianxia clenched her teeth and suddenly sneered. Why? Do you want to fight with me? Chu Luiyue circulated the force around his body, and an abundant amount of force flowed out of his dantian and into his right index finger. You wanted to kill me first. Am I not allowed to kill you in return? Situ Xianxia did not care about Chu Luiyue's actions. Instead, she chuckled as if she had heard a joke. You're just a stage 3 warrior? Her words were filled with undisguised mockery and disdain. Chu Luiyue's smile deepened. Yes, I do. I'm indeed a stage 3 warrior now, but I didn't say that I can only display the abilities of a stage 3 warrior. Situ Xianxia almost thought that Chu Luiyue had gone crazy. Okay. Today I want to see how long you can be arrogant for. The moment she said that, the bloody whip in her hand flew up again. She whipped it harshly. Pick. This time she used an even stronger force than before. When the bloody whip pierced through the air, it easily tore the space apart and left a few black cracks. In the blink of an eye, the bloody whip carried a strong force and went straight for Chu Luiyue. Shueishue quickly dodged. Its speed was extremely fast and it looked like a bolt of lightning. The blood whip missed. Situ Xianxia's face darkened. With the help of that high-level magical beast, not to mention killing Chu Luiyue, even wanting to injure her had become a difficult task. She raised her wrist. The blood whip chased after Chu Luiyue. But Shueishue's figure flashed and she easily dodged the attack again. Situ Xianxia refused to believe it and attacked again. Above the blood whip, there was even a faint layer of green-red light. The power contained within it was much stronger than the previous 2 times. When the bloody whip flew out, Situ Xianxia angrily shouted, "What the hell? Don't run if you have the guts." Before Chu Luiyue could reply, Shueishue had already turned around and raised a claw, swinging it forward fiercely. Whoosh! The blood whip was torn apart by Shueishue's claws. Situ Xianxia gasped. This magical beast was actually stronger than he had imagined. Shueishue glanced at Situ Xianxia. Her icy blue eyes were cold and indifferent. It was as if she was looking down on an ant. Chu Luiyue lightly patted Shueishue's head. Well done. Shueishue turned around and the frost in its eyes disappeared, replaced by unconcealed arrogance and delight. That huge furry head intimately rubbed against Chu Luiyue's palm a few times. It was completely different from its previous cold and dignified appearance. Situ Xianxia was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She was also affected by the counterattack just now. Her internal organs felt like they were squeezed into a ball. She originally wanted to take the chance to take revenge and get rid of Chu Luiyue completely, but it seemed like it would be a little difficult now. Unless my cultivation level could increase again. Yes. I can only kill Chu Luiyue if I continue to cultivate and become an even stronger warrior. Thinking of this, Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and strengthened the barrier around her. Then she closed her eyes and continued to absorb the surrounding power. Actually, the power contained in the greenish-red light from the bronze cauldron kept flowing into her body. As long as she focused at the most crucial moment and tried to break through, she would succeed. Chu Luiyue saw Situ Xingqian suddenly stop. He thought about it and understood her intentions. How can there be such a good thing in the world? Fighting whenever she wants and stopping to break through whenever she wants? Just as Chu Luiyue thought of this, a red figure flashed across his eyes. Dumpling actually flew directly towards Situ Xingqian. At this point, if Chu Luiyue was in front, he would see Dumpling puffing up her cheeks in anger. Damn it! My limelight has been stolen. Once Dumpling thought of how it tried to pull Chu Luiyue back but failed and was even swept away by that power, it was furious and embarrassed. Compared to the White Lion's performance, it had no face at all. Upon seeing Dumpling rushing toward her, Situ Xingqian's lips curled up into a cold smile. This barrier's defensive power is very strong, and even the 7th-grade red-tailed flood dragon might not be able to break it, let alone this 3rd-grade blood ferret. It does have some capabilities, but, with a bang, Dumpling directly pounced on the barrier and harshly bit down on it. A gigantic hole instantly appeared. Situ Xingqian's smile froze and disbelief filled her eyes. How is this possible? As if venting its anger, Dumpling harshly bit to the side. A similar scene appeared in the Qin Jiao competition again. Even Chu Luiyue couldn't help but be shocked. Why does Dumpling's teeth seem to be better than before? Even though the barrier around Situ Xingqian was thick, it couldn't stop Dumpling from creating such a barrier. At first she wanted to ignore this matter and quickly break through. However, when she saw Dumpling biting a hole and stuffing itself into it, she finally couldn't take it anymore and was forced to stop. Chu Luiyue. If you're really capable, fight one-on-one with me. **C, these fiends are nothing. Chu Luiyue blinked and smiled. Isn't it my capability that I can summon such a fiend to help me? I didn't say that you can't do this. Since you hate me to the core, just use whatever means you have. Situ Xingqian's chest seemed to be choked by something and her face flushed red. How can a normal fiend be these two's match? Chu Luiyue suddenly shouted, Xue Xingqian. Xue. Xue seemed to have telepathy with her as it stomped on the ground and instantly rushed towards Situ Xingqian. Upon seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Is Chu Luiyue actually planning to fight Situ Xingqian head-on? That white lion is a high-level fiend. Didn't you see how easily it defeated Situ Xingqian's attack? With its help, Chu Luiyue might win. But Situ Xingqian is a few grades stronger than her. If they fight head-on, Chu Luiyue will definitely be at a disadvantage. 2 rays of light, one green and one red, gathered in Situ Xingqian's hands. Then she harshly clasped her hands together. The 2 rays of light instantly clashed together. Dual palms. Chu Luiyue raised her hand. On her right index finger, a dazzling ray of light suddenly flashed. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 455. That ray of light shone in her eyes and it was dazzling beyond compare. However, this ray of light was nothing compared to the gigantic greenish-red palm print that Situ Xingqian executed in midair. Everyone's gaze was focused on the palm print that contained a strong suppression. Chu Luiyue looked up and squinted her eyes slightly. There seemed to be a strange pattern in the middle of the palm print, and it was faintly discernible. It was exactly the same as the pattern that appeared on the light pillar previously. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. That pattern was clearly a seal, but for some reason, it appeared on the palm print again. Suddenly she felt a movement coming from the cosmic bag. It was the wooden box that she snatched from Situ Xingqian previously. That strange pattern seemed to contain a special power. Every time it appeared, it would cause a huge reaction from the wooden box. At this moment, Situ Xingqian hollered, "Go!" That palm print slowly moved toward Chu Luiyue. A strong suppression was continuously emitted from it. The surrounding space seemed to be greatly suppressed as it became heavy and stagnant. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that she was in a swamp, and every move she made required a lot of effort. Situ Xingqian's power has definitely reached the peak of stage 5. Chu Liyue is probably in danger. She actually rushed forward. It's definitely too late for her to escape now. I really don't know what she's thinking. The crowd discussed fervently. Chu Liyue, who was in midair, didn't hear them. But even if she could hear them, she wouldn't care. Since she dared to do this, she naturally has her reasons. That gigantic palm print seemed to be moving slowly, but it was actually very fast. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of Chu Liyue. In comparison, Chu Liyue looked exceptionally thin and petite, as if she would be swallowed by that palm print at any moment. But at this moment, Chu Liyue finally stretched out her right hand and lightly tapped forward with her index finger. Jingxian finger. Buzz. A ripple suddenly appeared in midair. Then the faint glow on his fingertips suddenly shone brightly. Half of the sky above Chu Liyue's head seemed to have lit up. That light was grand, brilliant, and majestic. It was as if it could generously and gently encompass everything in the world. Under the illumination of this light, the strange pattern on the palm print suddenly appeared extremely ugly. The power of both sides intertwined. Like snow meeting sunlight, the palm print actually began to quietly and quickly melt away. The smug smile on Situ Xingqian's face suddenly froze, and fear crept into her eyes. How could this be? How could this be? She had used all of her strength in this attack. But why was he defeated so quickly after Chu Liyue made his move? From the looks of it, there was no room for a counterattack. Situ Xingqian kept circulating the energy in her body and channeling it into the palm print, but it was to no avail. She looked at Chu Liyue in disbelief and resentment. One finger. Chu Liyue actually used one finger to defeat me. Actually, Chu Liyue was just as shocked as Situ Xingqian. This was the first time she had officially executed Jingxian finger after learning it. She knew that Jingxian finger was very powerful, but she didn't expect it to be this powerful. It was clearly stronger than same-grade warrior techniques. Chu Liyue looked at his finger. That grand and brilliant light contained immense power. If she didn't see it with her own eyes, she probably wouldn't have believed this scene. Could this be the strength of a heaven-grade warrior technique? Situ Xingqian finally panicked. If I continue fighting with Chu Liyue, I definitely won't be able to gain any advantage. The only thing I can do now is to quickly increase my abilities. Boom. That gigantic palm print finally disappeared completely. Even that strange pattern disappeared once again. Blood seeped out of the corner of Situ Xingqian's mouth. Together with her originally blood-stained body, she looked even more pathetic. The next moment she suddenly turned around and ran into the distance. Chu Liyue raised his brows slightly and patted Xianxia lightly. Xianxia immediately understood and rushed forward. Its speed was naturally faster than Situ Xingqian's, and it blocked her path in no time. Seeing that Chu Liyue had caught up so quickly, Situ Xingqian's face turned a little ugly. Eldest Princess Situ, we haven't decided who the winner is, yet you're running away just like that? Isn't it a little inappropriate? Asked Chu Liyue with a faint smile. Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth. She could feel countless pairs of eyes staring at her from below. Mockery, mockery and disdain. They're all here for me. Who said that I'm running away? Situ Xingqian forced herself to shout, and her voice was much sharper than before. You just used some unorthodox methods. Chu Liyue, do you really think that you're my match? Chu Liyue laughed. Unorthodox methods? Those words should be returned to Situ Xingqian. You'll know whether I'm your match or not very soon. Chu Liyue smiled, but a tinge of murderous intent flashed across her eyes. The next moment she jumped up and went straight for Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian was shocked at first, but she then sneered in her heart. Chu Liyue actually wants to have a physical fight with me. This is the stupidest choice I've made today. The two of us are 2 whole stages apart, and Chu Liyue's physical strength can't be compared to mine. If Chu Liyue continues to use the previous move, I might not be able to withstand it. But no. I'm clearly courting death. You're courting death. Situ Xingqian circulated the force in her body and stretched out her hand. Flying eagle claw. A few afterimages mixed together. They all went for Chu Liyue's face. Chu Liyue leaned forward. She didn't know how her wrist moved, but it avoided Situ Xingqian's move and tightly clamped onto her wrist. Then she exerted force with her fingers and tightly clenched them. The crisp sound of a bone breaking was heard. Ah! Xianxia cried out in pain. Her entire face turned pale. At that moment there was only one thought left in her mind. Why is Chu Liyue's wrist so strong? Xianxia instinctively raised her leg and kicked at Chu Liyue. However, Chu Liyue was even faster. Bang! The two people's legs harshly collided. Xianxia felt as if she had hit a metal plate, and her entire leg instantly turned numb. After a short pause, intense pain surged through her. She suddenly looked up and stared at Chu Liyue with eyes full of resentment. Yubi asterisk. Chu Liyue's lips curved up and a cold glint flashed across her palm. It went straight for Xianxia's heart. Xianxia was shocked. She immediately tried her best to dodge it. That dagger pierced into her chest and was only a few centimeters away from her heart. However, Chu Liyue didn't let go. Instead, he tightened his grip on the dagger's handle and harshly twisted it. Separate. Two thin flying daggers instantly entered Xianxia's body. Digression. I'm adjusting my schedule today. I'll take my medicine and sleep later. I hope I can sleep well. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock a.m. please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 456. Two cold, piercing sensations instantly spread throughout her body. Xianxia's face turned pale and she slowly lowered her head to take a look. Blood slowly seeped out from the front of her shirt. Choo-choo. Two flying daggers pierced through her chest and flew out. Chu Liyue bent his arm and harshly hit her shoulder with his elbow. Xianxia violently spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. Chu Liyue hurriedly dodged and jumped onto Shue's back, which happened to rush over. Bang! Xianxia landed heavily on the ground. As the force of the impact was too strong, her body dragged on the ground for a long time before finally stopping. A long trail of blood was left on the ground and it looked ghastly. There was dead silence in the sky. Almost everyone thought that Chu Liyue was dead for sure, but they didn't expect Xianxia to be the one who lost after the two of them had an intense fight. Even though the fiend's appearance couldn't go unnoticed, Chu Liyue did personally knock Xianxia down just now. Elder Yi and Elder Zhou Yi, who were in the midst of a chaotic fight, finally stopped when they saw this scene. However, the two of them had very different expressions. Elder Ye's worries instantly disappeared, and the wrinkles on his face bloomed like a flower. His eyes were filled with unconcealable delight. I've long said that Xianxia doesn't have the right to be compared to Lu Yu. Zhou Yi, what else do you have to say now? Elder Zhou Yi's face was so ugly that it was as if he had swallowed a fly. Xianxia's cultivation level is clearly much higher than Chu Liyue's. How could she lose? I originally thought that I would definitely win this match. Yet it ended up like this. His eyes flickered and he immediately wanted to go forward. Zhou Yi, what are you planning to do? Old man Yi moved and stood in front of Elder Zhou Yi, his face full of smiles. Zhou Yi's face darkened. You want to stop me? Look at what you're saying. Didn't you also stop me just now? We're the same. Looking at Zhou Yi's ugly face, Elder Yi only felt proud and elated. Just now I wanted to help Lu Yu, but this fellow stopped me. Now I want to help Xianxia. How can it be so easy? Elder Zhou Yi frowned. With Yi Zhiding around, he couldn't spare any time to help at all. Didn't you say earlier that you wanted to see who would win in the end? Then, why don't we watch it together? Elder Ye's face was full of smiles, but the biting cold aura around him made it clear that he absolutely would not let Elder Zhou Yi pass. Elder Zhou Yi's heart was filled with hatred. While the two of them were talking, Shui had already swooped down with Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue easily leaped and landed on the ground. Xianxia struggled to stand up. However, the wounds on his body were still bleeding. The pain on her shoulder and back was intense. She didn't need to look to know that her shoulder blade had been pierced. Didn't you want to fight me one-on-one? Chu Liyue said slowly as he played with the dagger in his hand. As you wish. It was much more convenient for the two of them to fight on the ground. When Xianxia saw Chu Liyue's nonchalant smile, she couldn't help but shiver harshly. She only felt that the current Chu Liyue was like a demon that walked out of hell. What do you want to do? Xianxia yelled fiercely. am country Xing Luo's eldest princess. How dare you touch me? Chu Liwei couldn't help but laugh out loud. Eldest Princess Situ, of course I know your identity. But didn't I just punch a hole through you? You don't have to ask such nonsense, right? Situ Xingqian's heart sank. Chu Liwei really looks like he doesn't have any reservations at all. You seem to have forgotten what you just did. Chu Liwei lifted his chin and his gaze swept across her entire body. Who do you think will speak up for you now? After causing such a huge commotion in country Yao Chen's palace, neither Emperor Zhou nor Rongjie would let this matter rest. Besides, Situ Xingqian was in the wrong first. Previously, Situ Yan couldn't save her, so it's even more impossible this time. As Chu Liwei spoke, he took a step forward. Panic flashed across Situ Xingqian's eyes, and she instinctively took a step back. The current me might not even be Chu Liwei's match. Besides, Chu Liwei has an advanced fiend helping him. Situ Xingqian's heart became increasingly frantic, and something crazily moved in her chest, wanting to rush out. It would be great if he could become stronger. It was as if a sharp voice kept reverberating in her mind. Chu Liwei squinted his eyes and was about to go forward to finish Situ Xingqian off completely when he saw her suddenly look up. A bloody glow flashed across Situ Xingqian's eyes. Chu Liwei's eyes shrunk. Instinctively, he felt that something was amiss with Situ Xingqian. Previously, Situ Xingqian's eyes were actually bloodshot, but Chu Liwei thought that she became like that because of her anger and agitation. But now that bloody red color seemed to have become even more intense. The most important thing was that Situ Xingqian's pupils had actually turned red as well. From afar they looked like two eyeballs filled with craziness and murderous aura. Dong dong. A strange sound came from the Qiankuan bag. Dong dong. This time the sound was even clearer. Chu Liwei suddenly understood something. This was the sound from the wooden box in the cosmic bag. The thing inside seemed to have been summoned and crazily wanted to come out. She lowered her head and was about to suppress it when she suddenly saw a ray of light rushing out and heading straight for Situ Xingqian. It was that wooden box. Situ Xingqian grabbed the wooden box in her hands. Chu Liwei's eyelids twitched. Then she saw Situ Xingqian open the wooden box. That goatskin scroll glowed faintly as it floated in front of Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian threw the wooden box down and slowly bit her fingertip. A drop of blood quickly flowed out. The next moment she held the goatskin scroll in her hands and used her bleeding finger to lightly draw a line on it. Chu Liwei stared at this scene closely and felt that she seemed to have overlooked something. After looking at it for a while, she finally understood what was going on. Situ Xingqian seemed to be controlled by something. At this moment, there was no longer any normal emotions in her pair of eyes. There was only endless craziness and murderous intent left. Her movements were stiff and slow, as if there was an invisible hand that was controlling everything about her. Chu Liwei's gaze landed on the goatskin scroll again. Suddenly her eyes focused. The picture that Situ Xingqian drew with her blood was clearly Chu. Chu Liwei quickly threw the dagger in her hand. It went straight for Situ Xingqian. But at this moment, Situ Xingqian had already drawn the last line. The complete and strange picture appeared in front of her eyes. Ding! The dagger seemed to have hit something and suddenly bounced back. The next moment the goatskin scroll slowly opened up. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 457. A blinding red light instantly exploded from the parchment and completely surrounded Situ Xingqian. Then, countless tiny cracks instantly appeared on Situ Xingqian's body. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. With a bang, Situ Xingqian fell to the ground and curled up into a ball. Her mind was blank and she only felt pain and itchiness all over her body. It was as if thousands of ants were crazily biting her. Situ Xingqian almost instinctively scratched her body. Not only did she tear her clothes, but she even used her delicately manicured nails to leave streaks of blood on her skin. When her neck was scratched out of shape, she finally reached her hand to her face. Then she scratched it harshly without hesitation. A few streaks of blood instantly covered half of her face. Her originally pretty face was ruined in an instant. It became ugly and scary. Ah! Situ Xingqian screamed hysterically. Upon seeing this scene, Chu Liwei knitted his brows tightly. Situ Xingqian's body is clearly being taken over. Also, The person who wants to take over her body has a very high cultivation level. That's why her physical body couldn't withstand the terrifying suppression, and her skin and flesh were torn apart. It's no wonder I couldn't break the barrier on the parchment no matter what. It turns out that there's another cultivator's soul hidden inside. Xianxia's body gradually stopped twitching. The moment the red light on her body disappeared, she slowly stood up and looked up at Chu Liyue. That's a completely different pair of eyes. Unfamiliar, cold and ruthless. Alarm bells rang in Chu Liyue's heart and he immediately retreated. But at this moment Xianxia raised her hand. Chu Liyue only felt a strong suction force enveloping his entire body, and his entire body uncontrollably fell forward. Roar! Shui roared angrily and jumped over. Xianxia's gaze turned and coldly glanced at it. A huge blood-red barrier instantly appeared, blocking Shui outside. Bang! Shui slammed heavily into the barrier. However, the barrier wasn't damaged at all. Many ways to escape flashed across Chu Liyue's mind, but she quickly realized that the force in her body was being suppressed by the other party's suppression. Under this terrifying suppression, her body almost couldn't move. The next moment, Xianxia suddenly grabbed her neck. Chu Liyue's neck tightened. Xianxia looked at Chu Liyue from above, and her lips curled into a cold smile. I really have to thank you. Even though it was the same face and voice, Chu Liyue knew that this wasn't the real Xianxia when she saw the pair of eyes. Without you, Shui and Xianxia in it, Chu Liyue's neck was strangled and her entire body was suspended in the air. As the hand kept tightening, Chu Liyue's face gradually flushed red, and her chest felt so stifled that it was about to explode. Why you? Chu Liyue wanted to say something but she could only spit out a few words. She tried to pry Xianxia's hand away, but she only felt sticky and sweet blood. Xianxia watched her struggle as if she was watching a joke. Her eyes were filled with disdain and contempt. Crack! Another crisp sound was heard. Xianxia looked up. Dumpling had already rushed to the barrier she had set up and tried to bite an opening. But this time it only left clear teeth marks on the surface. How can the barrier I personally set up be broken so easily? Her tone was light, but it was filled with unconcealed arrogance. Chu Liyue was even more certain that this person had already taken over Xianxia. Even if the real Xianxia isn't dead, she's not far from it. Tuanzi's face was full of resentment. She didn't believe it and bit down again. Crack! It was the same as before. Xianxia seemed to be impatient as she turned her gaze and looked at Shui. She then revealed a meaningful smile. This fiend is quite capable, but it's a pity that it's not yours. This sentence was naturally directed at Chu Liyue. But at this point Chu Liyue's face was flushed red, and she was almost suffocating. She couldn't even say a single word. Xianxia admired it for a while in satisfaction before slowly saying, I originally intended to kill you. I didn't plan to kill you, but since you've destroyed this body, don't blame me for being merciless. Chu Liyue suddenly raised her hand and a cold glint flashed across her palm. The dagger instantly stabbed towards Xianxia's wrist. But Xianxia seemed to have expected it as she quickly reached out with her other hand and directly clamped Chu Liyue's wrist. He harshly twisted it. Excruciating pain attacked her. Chu Liyue's vision turned black for a moment. It's just an eye for an eye. Xianxia sneered, and her eyes were filled with intense murderous intent. The moment the bones in her hand broke, the dagger also landed in Xianxia's hand. She held the dagger and pressed it against Chu Liyue's face. The cold touch made Chu Liyue's heart tremble. Your face is quite, this dagger. As Xianxia spoke, her gaze suddenly landed on the dagger and her eyes changed. Chu Liyue wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but he vaguely saw a tinge of shock and fear on her face. Now is the time. Chu Liyue gathered all the strength in his body, hugged Xianxia's wrist with both hands and harshly twisted it. At the same time that she instinctively let go of her hand, she kicked her leg out. With the help of the rebound force, Chu Liyue finally broke free from Xianxia's grip and jumped back. But this time, Xianxia didn't immediately chase after him. Instead, she looked at Chu Liyue in confusion. Where did this dagger come from? Her tone was very anxious and there seemed to be a tinge of fear in it. Chu Liyue knitted his brows. The person who asked this question wasn't the real Situ Xianxian but the person who took over her body. However, there doesn't seem to be anything special about this dagger, so why did she have such a reaction? Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't react, Situ Xianxian became even more anxious and took a step forward. Hurry up and say it. A thought suddenly flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind. This dagger was given to me by Rongxiu back then. Also, if I didn't remember wrongly, he seemed to have personally polished it. This should be the only one in the world and other people shouldn't be able to recognize it. This person's reaction is really too strange. What if I don't want to say it? Chu Luiyue asked word by word. Situ Xianxian chuckled. You don't want to say it, right? I naturally have my ways to make you say it clearly. The moment she said that, she quickly crossed her hands in front of her, and the force around her crazily surged. A ball of white flame quickly burned in front of her. Then the flame split into two and completely surrounded Chu Luiyue. Her figure was instantly surrounded by the scorching flame. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 458. The fire burned fiercely. It was as if it was going to burn everything to ashes. Lu Yu. Elder Yi couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Elder Zhong Yi, who had been fighting for a long time, finally found a chance and punched Elder Ye's chest. Elder Ye's body trembled and he only stabilized himself after taking a few steps back. Blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Elder Zhong Yi looked at the burning fire. Chu Luiyue's figure had almost disappeared. Yi Zhiding, it seems like your precious disciple is going to die this time. Elder Yi clenched his fists and looked at Elder Zhong Yi as if he was looking at an idiot. Zhong Yi, has your brain been eaten by a dog? Can't you tell that Situ Xianxian's body has long been possessed? That woke him up from his dream. Upon hearing the word, possessed, Elder Zhong Yi's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly looked at Situ Xianxian. He didn't notice it previously but now that he looked at it again he felt that everything was strange. He and Yi Zhiding were locked in a fight, so he didn't notice Situ Xianxian and Chu Luiyue's situation. He only vaguely remembered that Situ Xianxian seemed to have gone through a shocking change, and her abilities suddenly increased by a lot. Previously he thought that Situ Xianxian had become stronger because she had absorbed more energy. But now that he took a closer look he realized that her aura seemed to be completely different from before. Every cultivator's aura was different. The current Situ Xianxian did seem to have become another person. Elder Yi wanted to twist Zhong Ye's head off and see what kind of trash was inside. As a stage 6 warrior he didn't even notice this. But now he only cared about Chu Luiyue. Elder Yi finally shook Elder Zhong Yi off while he was in a daze and went straight for Chu Luiyue. At the same time Jian Fengqi, who was hiding in the dark, saw this scene and squinted his eyes. His attention was mostly on Situ Xianxian at this point. A soul that can possess a body is at least a stage 7 warrior when they were alive. Country Yaochen may seem ordinary but there are many secrets hidden in it. From the looks of it, Mu Qinghe had left a little too early and missed out on so many exciting shows. His gaze landed on the fire and he raised his eyebrows. Although he felt that Chu Luiyue, Situ Xianxian, Situ Xianxian, Situ Xianxian's SS, Situ Xianxian and Situ Xianxian 2's to Situ. If anything were to happen Mu Qinghe would definitely find trouble with him. Thinking of this, Jian Fengqi gently turned his palm in his sleeves, and light flashed beneath his feet. Just as he was about to rush up, he suddenly felt a biting cold aura flash past him from the side. He immediately became alert and turned his head to look in that direction. A black-robed figure quickly disappeared before his eyes. To Situ to him. Where? Suddenly he was shocked in his heart. This aura seems to be. Why are they here? Jian Fengqi moved. He had a strong urge to chase after Situ Xianxian. Just as he was about to follow Situ Xianxian caught sight of the fire again. Situ Xianxian stopped, turned and walked toward Chu Luiyue. Qihan paused. He heaved a sigh of relief after making sure that Jian Fengqi didn't follow him. He had been secretly following Chu Luiyue the whole time. The most important mission of the 13U Guard was to protect Her Highness. Now that Her Highness had reunited with Her Highness and the rest of the 13U Guard wasn't around, he took on this responsibility again. He was good at hiding. That was why he hadn't been discovered after following Situ Xingqian for so long. But when he saw that Her Highness was in danger, he was worried and accidentally leaked his aura, which was detected by Jian Fengqi. Fortunately, Situ Xingqian didn't follow Situ Xingqian. Qi Han was relieved. He looked at the white fire again and frowned. Her Highness is still a stage 3 warrior. Even though she's stronger than she looks, she's still lacking compared to before. Situ Xingqian's body has been taken over, and her combat power is above that of a stage 6 warrior. Her Highness shouldn't be able to handle it alone. Qi Han wanted to rush forward, but many people were watching. Once he did, he would be noticed. If he wasn't careful, he would suspect Her Highness's identity. Qi Han thought for a while. He finally decided to take action when he saw the fire burning more fiercely. No matter what, I have to save Her Highness first. But the moment he took a step forward, he heard a low and calm voice behind him. She can solve this problem by herself. Qi Han immediately turned around. A tall and slender figure came into view. His gaze froze when he saw the person's face. Princely Rongxiu. If you go out now, you'll bring her a lot of trouble. Don't you know? Rongxiu was wearing a snow-colored brocade shirt and a black cloak. He had one hand behind his back and he stood tall. His thin lips curved up slightly, and he had a faint smile on his face, making him look gentle and graceful. But his eyes and brows had a suppressive aura that couldn't be ignored, making one subconsciously submit to him. Qi Han stared at Rongxiu without saying a word. He actually didn't know when Rongxiu appeared behind him. Now that the two of them were confronting each other, he actually felt a faint threat from Rongxiu. That was the suppressive aura that only the strong had. From this, it was enough to tell that Rongxiu's skills were definitely above his. The air between the two of them seemed to have frozen, and it was stiff and stagnant. Rongxiu wasn't worried that Qi Han would see through his skills. During this period, Qi Han had also been probing around Princely Mansion, so he must have realized that something was amiss. If the 13 Yu guards didn't even have this bit of ability, they didn't need to exist. They would only be a burden to her if they stayed by her side. Just as Qi Han was hesitating on how to deal with this, a loud sound was suddenly heard. He immediately turned around to look. His pupils shrank. He saw a red flame suddenly rushing out from the burning white flame. In an instant, sparks flew everywhere. With that ball of flame as the center, violent energy crazily swept out in all directions. The road paved with white jade was instantly smashed to smithereens and sent flying everywhere. The crimson flames covered the sky and engulfed the white flames with ease. It was almost a one-sided suppression. A slender and straight figure gradually became clear. Countless pairs of eyes stared at that figure. She walked out slowly, her black hair and clothes fluttering. Her eyes were piercingly cold. She was like the god of death who had walked out from the flames of hell. Everyone who saw this scene sucked in a breath of cold air. That was Chu Luiyue. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 459. Her entire body was burning with scarlet flames. Reflected in her eyes, it became a flickering flame. Her footsteps were neither fast nor slow, but every step she took felt like she was stepping on the crowd's hearts. Jian Fengqi and Elder Yi, who originally wanted to rush over to help her, subconsciously stopped. Qi Han clenched his fists tightly and tried his best to control the waves in his heart. Her Highness is indeed Her Highness. Even if she's at a disadvantage, she can still survive. How many people in this world can do this? He could not help but turn around to look at Rongxiu, but he did not see any shock on Rongxiu's face. Instead, Rongxiu had a faint smile as if he had already expected all of this. This princely seems to be even more mysterious and powerful than I expected. Situ Xingqian's cold and fierce eyes suddenly cracked, revealing a tinge of shock and panic. For some reason she felt a strong threat from Chu Luiyue. He's just a stage 3 warrior. Where did this suppression and aura come from? Chu Luiyue finally stood still and looked up at Situ Xingqian. She then raised her hand. A ball of crimson flame suddenly condensed in her palm. A terrifying pressure slowly spread out from the fireball. Situ Xingqian felt increasingly uneasy, and her throat became extremely dry. Chu Liyue stared at her and his lips suddenly curled up into a smile, but it was extremely cold. She enunciated every word clearly. I hate it when people snatch my things. It was so in the past and it's even more so now. Situ Xingqian's heart suddenly sank and she instinctively retreated. Chu Liyue remained standing at his original spot, and he quickly waved his arm. Go! The fist-sized fireball immediately flew towards Situ Xingqian. Wherever it passed, a deep rut would appear on the ground. Situ Xingqian was fast, but it was even faster. The crowd only saw a fireball flying across the sky. The next moment the fireball had already rushed in front of Situ Xingqian. Unable to avoid it, Situ Xingqian simply stopped and clenched her teeth. In the end, Chu Liyue was only a stage 3 warrior. How strong could he be? She didn't believe that she couldn't even take a blow from Chu Liyue. Thinking of this, Situ Xingqian rapidly gathered the force in her body, transformed it into a sickle-like blood-colored light blade and flew forward. The blood-red light blade instantly split the fireball into two. Situ Xingqian snorted. That's all. Before she could finish speaking, her expression suddenly froze. Chu Liyue's smile deepened. Originally, I wanted to do it myself. I didn't expect you to take the initiative. You saved me a lot of effort. Other than Situ Xingqian, nobody else could see that there was a transparent flame hidden in the middle of the red fireball. Chu Liyue fused the two powers and delivered a fatal blow. The moment Situ Xingqian saw the transparent fire, she widened her eyes in shock. That was, whoosh. Two balls of flames swept over. Before Situ Xingqian could move, she felt an intense burning pain in her chest. She slowly lowered her head and saw that there was a bloody hole the size of a fist in her lower abdomen. Although it was a bloody hole, no blood actually flowed out. Due to the flame's terrifyingly high temperature, the skin and flesh around the wound were instantly charred, and the entire wound looked terrifying. However, the most important thing was that the pearl of essence was in her abdomen. When her abdomen was pierced, the pearl of essence inside was completely shattered. Situ Xingqian looked at the wound on her body and was dazed for a long time. It wasn't until she felt the origin power in her body begin to disperse uncontrollably that she finally came to her senses. You destroyed this physical body. She suddenly looked up and her eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. This was the chance that I waited for with much difficulty. It hadn't even been a quarter of an hour since she had successfully taken over this body. Chu Liyue smiled. This physical body isn't worthy of you. You don't have to thank me. Situ Xingqian was about to go crazy. She had waited for so many years and put in so much effort, but in the end, it was so easily destroyed by Chu Liyue. Our courting death. Situ Xingqian let out a sharp roar filled with hatred. However, her pearl of essence was already shattered, and she couldn't gather force with this body. The more she wanted to recover, the worse the situation was. It was as if the more she wanted to hold on to the sand in her hands, the faster it would flow away. She tried many times, but her pearl of essence was already destroyed and it couldn't be recovered. Faced with Situ Xingqian's overwhelming murderous intent, Chu Liyue didn't care at all and looked relaxed. Every time you possess a body, you'll use up a lot of force and might even damage yourself. I think you can't possess a second body now, right? Asked Chu Liyue with a faint smile. Situ Xingqian was so angry that her face turned white. This was because Chu Liyue was speaking the truth. Under such circumstances, it would be a fool's dream to possess Chu Liyue's body again and kill her. Her expression changed and ruthlessness flashed across her eyes. Bang! Situ Xingqian's body suddenly exploded. Xingqian. Elder Zhou Ye's face turned white in an instant. He looked at this scene in disbelief and felt that the world was spinning. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Situ Xingqian had been at Mingyue Tianshan for many years, and he had always doted on her and even treated her as his own. Now that he suddenly saw this scene, it was undoubtedly a huge blow to him. His eyes instantly turned red and he hated Chu Liyue to the core. Chu Liyue, give me your life. Without waiting for him to rush over, Elder Yi blocked him once again. Elder Zhou Yi was about to go crazy. Yi Zhiding. Chu Liyue killed Xingqian and this debt isn't over. Elder Yi was so angry that he laughed. Situ Xingqian already died when she was possessed. If you want to blame someone, you should blame the person who possessed her. Why are you blaming my disciple? If they did it, they would admit it. If they didn't do it, they definitely wouldn't take the blame. The reason why Xianxia was possessed was clearly because she crazily swallowed the bronze cauldron's energy until she summoned that spiritual body. She just reaped what she sowed. If she knew this would happen, why did she do it back then? Elder Zhou Ye's face turned red and white, and the veins on his forehead and neck popped up as if he was on the verge of breaking down. However, he couldn't say anything to rebut him. This was because he knew deep down that Yi Zhiding was right. However, it was impossible for him to admit it just like that. This is all because of Chu Luiyue. If it weren't for her, Xianxia definitely wouldn't have ended up like this. As he spoke, he directly shouted at Chu Luiyue angrily. Chu Luiyue. A life for a life. I, Zhong Yi, and the entire Xingluo won't let you off. However, Chu Luiyue didn't even look at him. After Xianxia's physical body exploded, she saw a blood-red ray of light quickly darting out. This person is actually planning to escape. Digression. There are 2 more updates later. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 460. That ball of red shot into the air and tore a hole in the deep Xianxia. The red-tailed flood dragon let out an angry roar. But that ball of red pierced through its tail. Crush. The huge deep Xianxia was completely broken. It turned into countless streaks of light and scattered in all directions. It looked like that thing was about to escape. Chu Luiyue's heart tightened. Just as she was about to chase after it, a silver sword suddenly pierced through the air. The sound of the sword was like thunder. When it entered her ears, it seemed to reach straight to her heart. Chu Luiyue seemed to have sensed something and looked up. She saw that the sword drew a bright arc in the air and quickly pierced toward that ball of red light. Clang! The sword pierced the ground and directly nailed that thing to death. Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed. A normal sword could not possibly nail a spirit body, especially one that was rather powerful. It was obvious that the pressure from the long sword was suppressing him. She was very familiar with the aura on it. She looked in the direction of the sword and instantly met a pair of deep eyes. Her heart suddenly felt like it had been hit by something soft. It was indeed him. However, this feeling did not last long because she immediately realized that the person standing beside Wuxia was Qi Han. These 2 people were actually together. Chu Luiyue's heart instantly skipped a few beats. Wuxia and Qi Han. What did they say? Did they know each other's identities? Wuxia was easy to deal with, but what about Qi Han? Wuxia was very resourceful. If he really wanted to know something, Chu Luiyue was full of doubts. The atmosphere between Wuxia and Qi Han became tense again. Why did you suddenly attack? Qi Han suddenly turned around and questioned in a deep voice. Just now it was Wuxia who said that Her Highness could handle everything by herself. That was why he suppressed the worry in his heart and did not rush forward. But in the blink of an eye, Wuxia was caught off guard and attacked. Wuxia glanced at Qi Han and smiled faintly. Because this prince is her fiancé. So calm and collected. So self-righteous. Qi Han's eyes widened as he suddenly realized something. You did it on purpose? In that case, Wuxia naturally became the first person to help His Highness. Wuxia raised his eyebrows slightly. This prince is only thinking for you. His tone was light as if he didn't think of anything else. Qi Han did not speak for a long time. Wuxia's words made sense. Now that Her Highness had not yet returned to the Tianling dynasty, if Her Highness's plan failed because of him, then he could only apologize with his death. But Wuxia was obviously selfish. There won't be a next time, Qi Han said coldly. Wuxia's eyebrows moved slightly and his smile deepened. You is my fiancé, so this is what I should do. Qi Han clenched his fists. If he didn't know that Her Highness really liked Prince Li, he would definitely have attacked by now. He really didn't know what Her Highness saw in him. Seeing that Qi Han and Wuxia seemed to be talking about something, Chu Luiyue was even more curious. However, she was quite a distance away from them, so she couldn't hear anything at all. She made up her mind to clean up the mess here as soon as possible and then find the 2 of them to clarify things. Thinking of this, she walked to the side of the long sword and surrounded the soul with flames. A cry of agony could be heard instantly. Chu Luiyue glanced at the small fireball and was surprised to find that the person's aura was rapidly weakening. The hellfire of the heavenly square cauldron can burn everything in the world, especially this soul. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly echoed in her heart. As long as it is condensed in the heavenly square cauldron, it will disappear completely very soon. Chu Luiyue widened her eyes slightly. Really? Then aren't you also? The legendary three-eyed eagle's physical body was destroyed, and now only a soul was left. However, it had also stayed in here for thousands of years, hadn't it? How can such a lowly person be compared to my race? The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice was filled with undisguised pride. Chu Luiyue thought that it made sense. After all, the legendary three-eyed eagle was a divine beast, so ordinary cultivators naturally couldn't compare. Although this cultivator seemed to have some background. You want his power? From the scream just now, she could already tell that this seemed to be a middle-aged man. The legendary three-eyed eagle was silent for a moment before finally admitting. That's right. The power in his soul can help me recover my cultivation. Chu Luiyue chuckled lightly. He was quite honest. Ever since she discussed with the legendary three-eyed eagle to help it last time, the relationship between them was not as tense as before. In her opinion, it was a good thing. With a thought, she called the fireball back into her body and threw the soul into the heavenly square cauldron. The moment that scarlet ball appeared, endless transparent karmic fire surged up. It completely drowned it. Ah, the cries of pain became even more mournful, but they soon became weaker. Chu Luiyue said in her heart, let's keep him alive first. She might be able to get something out of him later. Whether it was the bronze cauldron, the sheepskin scroll, or his reaction when he saw the dagger that Rongxiu gave her. Chu Luiyue pulled out the long sword. Suddenly her shoulder sank. It was Tuanzi who rushed over. Chu Luiyue smiled and patted its head. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Xianxia was still hesitating on the spot. Its eyes would occasionally drift to the long sword in her hand. Xianxia, thank you for today. Chu Luiyue roughly knew what it was thinking, so she couldn't help but smile and walk over. Xianxia then leaned in front of her. Its gaze swept across her wrist, and it revealed a tinge of heartache as it went closer and gently licked it. Chu Luiyue's heart warmed up. It's just a flesh wound. I'll be fine after some rest. Hung Long. A sudden clap of thunder came from the dark clouds. In the direction of Qinghe Hall, a figure shot up to the sky. Chu Luiyue focused her gaze and was instantly stunned. That person is actually Emperor Zhou. The key is that he seems to be breaking through to peak stage 6. Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 461. Vigorous origin power surged around his body, and the seal above his head had almost completely disappeared. Chu Luiyue previously knew that Emperor Zhou wasn't weak, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. The current him has actually reached the peak of stage 6. But he hasn't stopped. A ridiculous guess suddenly surfaced in Chu Luiyue's mind. If the seal completely disappears and Emperor Zhou's abilities break through again, as if to prove my guess, the surrounding heaven and earth force crazily surged into Emperor Zhou's body as the last stroke on the seal gradually disappeared. The aura on his body was still constantly strengthening. If Chu Luiyue was already like this, what about the other people who didn't know anything? When Emperor Zhou's figure appeared in midair and revealed his true cultivation level, almost everyone was stunned. That's His Majesty? It really is His Majesty. Wasn't he escorted to Qinghe Hall previously? Why is he, stage 6 warrior? His Majesty is actually a stage 6 warrior? The crowd discussed fervently, and the last sentence finally woke them up. The few family heads standing at one side exchanged glances and fell into an eerie silence. This happened too suddenly and it was too horrifying. Everyone in country Yaochen knew that Emperor Zhou's cultivation talent could barely be considered not bad. Compared to a real genius, it wasn't worth mentioning. In addition to the many years of living like a prince, one didn't need to think to know that Emperor Zhou's combat skills were very weak. Even just a moment ago the patriarchs were thinking the same thing. If not, Emperor Zhou wouldn't have lost so quickly when Rongjiu barged in, and he wouldn't have been in such a pathetic state. But now it seemed like the rich strength and formidable suppression clearly came from Emperor Zhou's body. This meant that he was different from Zhou Xian, who kept absorbing strength to break through. He was clearly hiding his true strength. But now he was finally able to display his true strength. Someone suddenly asked, "What's the third prince's matter? Where's the third prince?" The crowd was suddenly jolted awake. Rongjiu just went to find Emperor Zhou. Who would have thought that things would take a 180-degree turn in such a short period of time? Rongjiu was clearly at a disadvantage now. Even if he had outstanding battle achievements, he was definitely not a match for a rank 6 warrior. In actual fact, Rongjiu was in a better state than the crowd had imagined, as he was only slightly injured. When he arrived outside Qinghe Hall, he coincidentally saw Emperor Zhou cultivating. Just as he was about to enter, Emperor Zhou rushed up to the sky and didn't even care about him. That minor injury was only caused by the shockwaves of energy. However, the shock in his heart was 10,000 times heavier than that. He looked up at Emperor Zhou, whose abilities kept increasing, and tightly knitted his brows as many emotions flashed across his eyes. Shock, doubt, disbelief. After a while he suddenly laughed. Wei Lin, who was following closely behind, immediately asked, "Your Highness, are you all right?" Rongjiu shook his head and laughed even louder, but there was no smile in his eyes. So this was his imperial father. It turned out that what he had seen all these years was just an illusion. He thought that he knew a lot about his father, but in the end he realized that he knew nothing at all. That man had become a completely different person. No, or rather, he was originally like that. After Emperor Zhou appeared, the red-tailed flood dragon seemed to become even more anxious and uneasy. It seemed like it wanted to go forward, but it was always hesitant as it looked at Emperor Zhou with a complicated gaze. Chu Liwei glanced at it, patted Shui and softly asked, "Why? Why do I feel that the red-tailed flood dragon seems to hate Emperor Zhou? But at the same time it's a little fearful?" Shui rubbed its head against Chu Liue's palm and softly whimpered to express its affirmation. Dumpling nodded even more crazily. "It's so obvious. The red-tailed flood dragon clearly wants to get rid of Emperor Zhou completely. But for some reason it didn't do anything." Chu Liyue was even more confused. This deep Xian formation is Country Yao Chen's palace's defensive formation, and the red-tailed flood dragon is suppressed under it. Logically speaking, it should be on the same side as Country Yao Chen's royal family. Where did this inexplicable disgust and hatred come from? It can't be because it supported Rongjiu's ascension. That has nothing to do with it. At this point, the seal above Emperor Zhou's head completely disappeared. Emperor Zhou's violent aura surged. Dark clouds gathered and thunder rumbled. The wind howled. This is the sign of a breakthrough. Chu Liyue held his breath. Emperor Zhou is actually going to directly break through and become a stage 7 warrior? Hong long long. Following this loud sound, a silver ray of light suddenly descended from the sky. The dark sky was much brighter because of this ray of light. Then a second ray of light and a third ray of light appeared. It was as if there was a silver waterfall falling from the clouds. A gigantic canopy emitted a dazzling light. A vast suppression descended. Some people couldn't take it anymore and knelt down as they watched this scene agitatedly. Chu Liyue slowly clenched his fists, and he almost couldn't believe what was happening in front of him. Emperor Zhou actually summoned Heaven's Canopy. This is the sign that he's about to break through and become a stage 7 warrior. But looking at Emperor Zhou's expression, he didn't seem surprised at all. It was as if he had long expected all of this. Under countless gazes, Emperor Zhou slowly raised his hand and reached for Heaven's Canopy. "Hold on." A low and lazy voice suddenly sounded. "Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 462. Emperor Zhou suddenly paused in his actions and he abruptly turned around. A tall figure appeared in front of the crowd. He slowly walked over with a casual smile on his devilish face. His eyes were as deep and pure as the night sky, and he was surrounded by an indescribable aura as if he didn't belong to this world. It was Rongxiu. Chu Liyue widened her eyes slightly. This was because the aura on Rong Xiu's body became stronger with every step he took. Upon seeing this scene, the crowd gasped in shock. That's Prince Li? Isn't Prince Li weak and sick all year round? Now he actually broke through to become a stage 3 warrior. No, he's a stage 4 warrior now. In the face of this sudden change, almost everyone was stunned on the spot. But Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. Is Rong Xiu planning to show his true abilities? Why, Emperor Zhaowen stared closely at Rong Xiu and his face changed a few times. You're not sick. But Rong Xiu didn't immediately answer his question. Instead he walked straight to Chu Liyue and stood still. He looked down, held her hand and gently slid his fingers across her broken wrist. A warm and strong force instantly entered her body. Your Highness, actually you don't have to worry about. Chu Liyue originally wanted to say that he didn't have to worry about this injury since she was a celestial physician herself. She had already treated it briefly before and it would heal on its own after some time. But when she met Rong Xiu's deep and gentle gaze, her heart warmed and she swallowed her words. Sorry I'm late. Chu Liyue lightly shook her head. Chi Han, who was hiding in the dark, looked even colder. Leave the rest to me. Upon hearing Rong Xiu's words, Chu Liyue felt a little uneasy. What are you planning to do? He had painstakingly hidden it for so many years, so why did he have to reveal it all today? Rong Xiu's thin lips curved slightly. I'm just putting an end to it. Chu Liyue's heart tingled as he instinctively looked up at Emperor Zhaowen, who was in midair. A moment later she gently held his hand. All right. While the two of them were talking, Rong Xiu's aura had already broken through to a stage 5 warrior. After confirming that Chu Liyue was fine, Rong Xiu turned around to look at Emperor Zhaowen. At this point, if Emperor Zhaowen still couldn't tell what was going on, he would have wasted his many years on the throne. Rong Xiu, you were lying to me all this time? Not only was he not sick, but his cultivation was also extremely outstanding. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have reached this level at his current age. No. Rong Xiu did not seem to have stopped. He was about to break through the middle stage of the 5th stage. Rong Xiu smiled lightly. I'm just learning from you, father. Haven't you been like this for so many years? Emperor Zhaowen was dazed. Then he suddenly realized something as shock flashed across his eyes. Why, you already knew. Rong Xiu smiled and didn't say anything, clearly admitting to it. Emperor Zhaowen was instantly flustered and his aura was messy. Even the heavens canopy in front of him became a little illusory. Since when? What else do you know? Emperor Zhaowen's face had a rare look of panic and nervousness. Chu Liyue squinted his eyes. She had never seen such an expression on Emperor Zhaowen's face before. It was as if a secret that had been hidden for many years had suddenly been discovered. It was reasonable for him to be shocked. When the surrounding people saw the current Rong Xiu, they also had the same reaction. But where did this nervousness and panic come from? Mother has already passed away for many years. Father, you really don't have to be so worried. Rong Xiu's tone was calm as if he were talking about someone else's matters. Emperor Zhaowen felt as if he was struck by lightning. Rong Xiu must have known everything. The anger from being lied to previously suddenly disappeared, and guilt and hatred rapidly surged in Emperor Zhaowen's heart. Rong Xiu, what happened back then wasn't what you think it was. I had my reasons back then. It seemed like he wanted to explain himself. However, Rong Xiu wasn't interested in listening. He still smiled gently and lazily, but his eyes seemed to be frozen with a thick layer of ice. The past is the past. If you say this now, Mother won't be able to hear it. As for me, I'm just here today to fulfill Mother's last wish. As he spoke, his cold gaze landed on the item hanging around Emperor Zhaowen's neck, and he smiled meaningfully. You still used this item in the end, didn't you? Emperor Zhaowen's face quickly darkened. He seemed to have instantly aged by more than 10 years. Oh no, I was forced to. He clenched his fists and his face was filled with conflict and pain. First it was the Empress, then it was Rong Xiu. Everyone is betraying me. If I don't retaliate, I'll be completely trapped in this palace. My years of hard work will go to waste. How can I accept this? If these people didn't force me to this step, why would I do this? Slight mockery flashed across Rong Xiu's face. Some people are always the best at finding excuses for themselves. Emperor Zhaowen suddenly thought of something and hurriedly asked, What did you just say? You just said that you want to help her fulfill her last wish. What is it? If I can help, I'll definitely do my best. Father, are you serious? Xiu raised his brows as if he were wavering. Emperor Zhou harshly nodded. I'm the one who let her down. I can make it up to her. Mother said that she doesn't want to see you step into heaven's canopy. Especially with her power. Xiu's gaze was cold as he said every word clearly. She wants you to stay here forever and you can't leave even if you die. Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios mobile users, please browse and read. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.